Doom batted it away with his left hand before his double barrel materialized in his right, firing both shots with one finger as it blew a hole right through the rack's stomach. The former Dark Eldar stumbled back before Doom swiped his left foot underneath the abomination, tipping the rack into air before Doom brought his right fist into contact with its body, completely obliterating the unfortunate rack as only the bloody metal augments it had remained. The grotesque roared, charging forward again as Doom jumped above it, kicking off its back and into the air. The grotesque hit the metal wall, bending the metal to an unnatural angle as it was stuck for a moment. The other three remaining racks charged forward, intent on incapacitating the Marine for their master's gain. He needed to dispose of these guys quickly if he wanted to deal with the bigger threat. Monkey, take off your left gauntlet, Kine said as Doom threw a rack over his shoulder that attempted to overpower him. What? Just do it. Doom immediately grunted before sliding the Predator gauntlet off. The triangular brand on his hand glowed before it lit up, engulfing Doom's hand in fire before something began to take grip. First a handle and then a blade, until it fully revealed itself. A sword with a blade of fire, wreathed in the blood of fury as flames danced around it. The handle sported the mark of Kine. The racks immediately hesitated, unsure what to think of it. The homunculus' eyes widened, and the few Eldar within the crowd of slaves gasped. Doom, however, felt like a child in a candy store. "Oh, you're all fucked now," the Marine said as he looked at the racks, before charging forward. The first rack attempted to block, however it hardly mattered, as Doom sliced straight through it, the sword cutting through flesh and metal like butter, refreshing the air with the strong smell of boiling blood as the rack was practically incinerated from the upper half. The other two backed up against the wall, now in complete fear as a sliver of their consciousness recognized the sword of Keelam Minchakine. Doom was about to finish off the last two racks. That was until the grotesque smacked him with its metal hand from behind. Doom went flying through the air before smacking against the black metal wall, going through it as it left a human-sized hole. The grotesque roared as it rallied its two brethren, the two racks quickly getting beside it. There was an eerie moment of silence before the homunculus spoke. "Is he dash?" A faint charging sound was heard, before a giant green orb of impossible energy came barreling through. Arcs of green electricity quickly spread to the two remaining racks as they screeched out in agony before their innards became outards, blowing up their bodies like confetti, flinging metal and organs around the place. The green orb struck the grotesque square in the chest, blowing up a giant burning hole as the grotesque roared in pain, slumping over as it struggled to get up. Doom revealed himself, looking genuinely pissed before walking towards the struggling abomination as it attempted to stand up. Doom immediately held the BFG in his right hand before balling a fist in his left and smashed off the creature's mask. Its horrifying stitched face seemed to be an assortment of stitches from every race as it sneered at him, growling in defiance. The Doomslayer sighed before the mark of Kine on his left acted up. The familiar fiery sword reappeared again as he brought it dangerously close to the abomination's face. The grotesque roared in outrage. "Yeah," Doom said before plunging the sword with his left hand forward into the grotesque's face. "Fuck you too, dude." Immediately the flesh around the grotesque's face melted before its body exploded, starting with the head as the fire started a chemical reaction with the steroids pumped in its body. Its metal and guts went flying everywhere as the creature was no more. All that was left of its existence was its arms and legs, which comically remained in the position the grotesque died in. Doom brushed off the blood from his armor before unequipped the BFG and looking at the homunculi from above. The Dark Eldar's eyes were wide with fear before the Torture Master attempted to back away. "Oh no you don't, asshole." The Doomslayer jumped a tremendous height before the thrusters on his boots propelled him even further, allowing him to only barely grab onto the railing. The homunculus fell back in shock before attempting to fire his liquefier gun. Doom, however, grabbed the third arm that held it before tearing it off as the green sickly blood splattered on the Marine. The homunculus screeched in pain as his other limbs whirled around in an attempt to fight off the Marine. Doom merely slammed a foot on the homunculus' chest before tearing off his mask as flesh peeled off, revealing the torturer's ruined mouth. "Tell me where your fucking boss is," Doom said as he pressed his foot down even further, making the homunculi writhe in pain. The homunculi stuttered as the Dark Eldar attempted to speak. Slaves slowly gained courage as they looked at their hero brutalize their torturer. The torturer attempted to speak before Doom grabbed the homunculus' second arm before twisting it and tearing the limb off, making the Dark Eldar scream in agony. Doom took the Dark Eldar's own metallic and fleshy arm, before smacking the torturer across the face with it as green blood sprayed from the stump. "Wrong. Smack. Fucking. Smack. Answer. Smack." The torturer gasped after the last hit before his bruised and blooded face spoke. He's up at the bridge. Just please let me dash. Thanks, Doom said before lifting his other foot. Wait and oh dash, Doom stomped down, directly on the torture master's head and sprawling his brains across the floor. Doom slowly raised his foot up before wiping the blood off of it. The song playing in his helmet coincidentally stopped. Doom took a deep breath to control his anger before finally calming down. The crowd jumped back a bit when they saw Doom turn to them. By the Emperor, that was the work of a demon. No, it was not. That warrior, he bears the Sword of Kine. The Sword of Kine? What Xeno nonsense are you talking about? It is not nonsense, Monkey. It is the truth. Do not bother. The Gulaw will not listen to Dash. Doom immediately scratched the back of his helmet. You guys do realize I can hear you perfectly, right? The slave crowed, turned to him. Doom coughed before speaking. Well, I just gotta go up to the bridge to kick their leader's ass. I'll send someone to help you guys later. Promise. Doom said before walking onward. The slaves watched as he left before going inside the homunculus personnel grav lift. The slaves only wondered one thing. Who in the hell was this guy? Chapter 10, Redaverting, Torture of Isha Bridge. The Trueborn drummed his finger against the seat before he activated the holographic link. Homunculi, have you dash? Only to see that the torture master's face had been bashed in, the Trueborn was shocked to say the least before shutting down the link. What in Kine's name is going on? The incubi and SSLYTH stood by his side, deathly silent whilst the enslaved sister of battle could barely pay attention. Instead, she was thinking who could possibly be giving the Dark Eldar such a hard time all by his lonesome. However, a holographic link came on, showing the face of a fearful warrior. Trueborn, some Harlequins have boarded our ship from the boarding bay. We're getting slaughtered down in the weapons to dash. However, before the warrior could finish, he was stabbed from behind by some weapon before he screamed in agony within his armor as blood came pouring out of every crevice. The Harlequin's kiss was known to do that. Mugud immediately shut down the link. First a farcer, then a Harlequin troop? What is so important about this vessel? Mugud said in anger. And to make matters worse, he still had to deal with that other intruder that somehow took down his ship's homunculi. Torture of Isha weapons deck. Doom pressed the elevator button again, before pressing it again, before smashing it in anger. Apparently, it didn't take him directly to the bridge. Instead, it took him to what appeared to be the weapons bay. And he wasn't alone either. There were a few cowboy-like corpses. However, while some looked like they were simply stabbed, a few looked like their armor had been used to make a fleshy soup as blood and gore came streaming out of any gaps of their armor. Doom stepped to the elevator before looking around. Apparently, there was nobody here. He was about to walk forward until he sensed it. Something was behind him. Less than a split second, Doom turned before catching a glimmer steel blade with his gauntlet. The green and black-skinned Mandrake growled before attempting to bail blast Doom as green fire grew in its left hand. Doom, however, punched the thing in its stomach using his free hand with such force that the Mandrake paused before throwing up a wad of black blood right into Doom's visor. The Marine immediately picked the Mandrake up by the throat before slamming it against the ground. Its limbs immediately broke away into shadows from the impact as the rest of its body slowly dissipated. Doom simply wiped the black blood from his visor in annoyance before walking onward. He turned another corner, this time in a much bigger room, almost the size of a cargo bay as various dark machinery laid around the place. He walked before turning around at another corner, face to face with a sad-looking horn mask. Doom was about to smack whoever was only to realize it was the Solitaire, the exact same one that followed him when he was back at his room. Doom immediately calmed. Jesus Christ. Don't fucking surprise me like that, Doom said before gesturing his hand. If I fucking slapped you, then you would be fucking dead. The Solitaire looked at Doom before shrugging. So, where the hell's the rest of your pals? Doom asked before the Harlequin pointed to the left, revealing the Troop Master Arlecchino along with the Shadow Seer Columbine, the Death Jester Hamlet, and a bunch of other Harlequin players. Doom, you arrived as expected, Arlecchino said as he took a delicate towel from his sleeve and cleared blood off his power sword. Just in time for our finishing act. Doom shrugged. Okay, I'm up for it. What exactly did you guys have in mind? Columbine spoke in a quiet voice. There's a control room which guides the fire of the phantom lances of this ship. We gain access and then dash. Avert fire to the escorts. Doom said as he guessed it. Precisely. Doom patted his hands together. All right then. What are we fucking waiting for? Let's do this shit. Doom said before walking past the Troop Master. It's the other way, Hamlet said in a grave voice. Doom looked behind him to see a large set of black metal doors. Oh, before turning around and walking towards the door. The rest of the troop followed behind him. The Doomslayer pulled back a foot. Everyone ready? The troop is ready to dance, Arlecchino said as he prepared his sword. Doom nodded before kicking his leg forward. The door slammed open before there was a flood of purple crystal fire. Doom was the first to charge forward as he took out the fiery bolt pistol, spotting a Dark Eldar who was out in the open before firing. The explosive bullet penetrated his stomach before the explosion tore the unlucky warrior in half. The rest of the Harlequins rushed inside, dancing with unnatural grace as they dodged between purple rounds, slashing and shooting at seemingly random times as they broke through the front line of Dark Eldar. Arlecchino charged forward as he somersaulted through the air that was filled with gunfire before his elegant power sword stabbed an unlucky Dark Eldar, splattering blood from the wound. His hollow suit distorting his form, making it almost impossible to hit the Harlequin leader as he went on a rampage. Hamlet laid down fire support with their Shrieker cannons along with 2 other Death Jesters as they desecrated the room. Any Dark Eldar who were unluckily shot or even scratched by the modified Shuriken cannons immediately found their blood begin to boil and their organs rupture before exploding because of the projectiles used being impregnated with genetic toxins. Columbine the Shadowseer simply stood there before drawing back a breath with the perfect note leaving her mouth. However, within a second the note changed to that of a banshee scream as immediately waves of sounds roll forth, breaking the first line of Dark Eldar defense as their bones shattered from the octave of warp energy. A few unlucky ones held their heads before yelling in pain as their brains exploded. Doom had encountered another form of metal cover with a few Dark Eldar shooting at the Doomslayer from behind it. The Marine cracked his neck in annoyance as the purple splinter ammunition bounced off his armor. He rushed forward at unnatural speeds before shoulder bashing straight through the Dark Eldar cover, tossing fragments of metal everywhere. The Dark Eldar stumbled before Doom took out his shotgun, firing a grenade with the lower barrel into the middle of them as their bodies were tossed through the air like ragdolls. He was about to rush forward toward doors at the end of the room before an object landed beneath his feet. It glowed with purple energy before blowing up, tossing the Marine through the air as he landed on his feet with a grunt. Now he was pissed as he scanned around to see who threw it. A squad of witches revealed themselves in their revealing armor as they grinned. The room battle going on was behind them as they had successfully separated Doom from the rest of the Harlequins. "Why, you're a strong Mon K. You will make a good pet," their leader said. Doom chuckled before cracking his knuckles. "And you should put some fucking clothes on," he said to the 8 witch cultists. Their leader frowned before the witches jumped into action. Doom was a bit surprised at how fast they actually were, as they seemed to be all over the place. One of them dashed right past the Doomslayer, her knife causing sparks as it attempted to slice through but to no avail. Doom attempted to blast her with his shotgun only for her to dodge out of the way and cover. Doom growled before another attempted to cut him at the shin. However, Doom anticipated it this time, grabbing the witch by the hair as she screeched like a harpy before Doom lifted her up as she struggled. The Marine grabbed his shotgun before pressing it against her exposed belly button and pulling the trigger. Blood and guts were thrown around the place before her struggling ceased as blood slowly dripped from her mouth. The Marine simply dropped her before turning around. The other witches now looked more cautious. "She'll be hard to replace. However, even your strong armor cannot protect you, forever toy." Doom glared at her in anger. "I think you're misunderstanding something," Doom said as he took out his heavy assault rifle. "Always end up on top in the end," before a rack of micro-missiles opened up next to the barrel of the gun. Within an instant, a barrage of micro-missiles were sent forth. The leader, witch eyes widened before she dodged out of the way. The witch behind her got stabbed right through the chest with the missile before it blew up. Another witch got caught in the explosion of missiles as her body was completely shredded. The other witches quickly got over the shock before charging forward, screaming in rage at the death of their sisters, which Doom was going to exploit. The first witch attempted to stab at him with her wicked knife. The Doomslayer caught her wrist before twisting it. She screeched as she dropped the blade before Doom punched her right in the face. Her head ceased to exist as it exploded into fragments. The second Dark Eldar attempted to slice and dash away, except that the heavy assault rifle's purpose was to pick off fast targets. The gun materialized in his hands before he fired, missing the first few shots until he tracked it better, nailing her by the upper body as his shoulder was blown off before the rest of the 50 FMJ rounds tore her pieces. Third one had tried a different tactic, staying a distance away as it drew out a deadly multi-bladed razor flail before cracking it forward like a whip. It caught Doom's assault rifle before pulling it away as the rifle clattered towards the floor. Doom was now super pissed. Nobody ever got rid of his access to weapons. He was about to rush forward before a witch jumped behind his back, attempting to stab him in his chest plate. Doom caught her hand just inches before the dagger hit his armor before swinging her arm downwards with his own. The witch smashed against the metal ground with a loud crack before Doom held up a foot and stomped directly on her head as her pretty brains splattered against the ground. The other witch with the razor flail attempted to strike at him again, wrapping her weapon around Doom's left hand. However, the Marine wrapped his own hand around the whip before grabbing the cables on the razor flail before tugging backwards. The witch was pulled forward as the dark Eldar screeched in surprise before Doom drew his hand back and plunged his metal hand straight through her chest. Blood dripped out as the Eldar coughed up blood before slumping over. The leader witch now looked enraged as she hissed at Doom before she got ready to pounce. Doom raised both hands up in defense. However, her attack never came as the dark Eldar's face twisted in confusion before she screeched in complete agony. Her flesh looked as if it was being torn inside before her skin exploded like a piñata. Doom was immediately covered with blood and guts as he wiped it away before looking back at where her body used to be. A familiar blood-soaked solitaire with a strange device in his gauntlet as it drew back a monofilament wire from what used to be her corpse. The Harlequin looked at Doom for a second before giving a small wave. Doom chuckled a tiny bit before laughing hysterically. Holy shit, dude. That was fucking priceless. The solitaire hung his head down as if he was embarrassed from the attention before looking back up. All right, enough of that shit. Let's get to the control room, Doom said as he picked up his assault rifle. Doom and the solitaire ran back to the main room battle, which was just finishing up. A few true players lied dead on the ground. Even in death, they looked staged as they had hand raised to the ceiling, as if reciting a dying monologue before passing away despite the grievous injuries inflicted on them. Arlecchino immediately spotted the Slayer. It is time to finish this performance. But the door requires some sort of biological scan, the Harlequin said before pointing toward the metal sliding door with some sort of head-level scanner next to it. Doom looked to the side before spotting a dead Dark Eldar. Wordlessly, he grabbed the warrior's helmeted head before tearing it off, holding the head before he pressed it harshly against the scanner. There was a beep before the door opened. About 3 unarmored Dark Eldar stumbled back in terror with meager splinter pistols as they attempted to fire at Doom. The Marine scoffed before cracking both his fists once more, walking inside casually. The sound of ripping flesh and screams of agony was heard before Doom came back out covered with even more blood, giving the Harlequins a thumbs up. The troop wasted no time as they rushed inside. Interacting with the various councils before the phantom lances shone through the purple-tinted window began to turn towards the Dark Eldar escorts, opening up with its array of weaponry. The first lance of dark matter struck the escort, blowing it up in one shot before the other escorts attempted to boost out of the way, but to no avail, as the lances quickly turned and fired upon the other 2 escorts, disabling them. Doom patted his hands together, all in a day's work. Doom said as Arlecchino came up next to him, I must thank you, Doomslayer, for joining us. A lot more of our brethren would have lost their lives. The troop master said, to which Doom simply shrugged. No problem, but you think you could do me a favor? Anything so long as it doesn't conflict with my god's aims. I cleared out the lower decks, but I couldn't help any of the slaves down there. You think you can get some of your men to evacuate them? Doom asked. The Harlequin looked up and thought. A strange request in this grim, dark future. Before looking back down, but we'll be done. Good. Doom said before spotting a final elevator, this time the map showing that it lead directly to the bridge. Because I have unfinished business to attend to. Chapter 11. Back to base. Alionaretha's gift. The remaining Dark Eldar were pushing forward as the Aspect warriors steadily were forced to fall back, lest they suffer casualties. However, when the Kabbalite warriors reached a window, they gaped in shock when they saw their own ship open fire on her escorts before immediately backing up, giving the Aspect warriors the perfect moment. Using the surprise to their advantage as the Banshees rushed forward and the Dire Avengers opened fire, cutting and mowing down the front line of the Dark Eldar before the rest of them began rushing back to their cruiser. Machu, now a bit exhausted, smiled lightly as she watched the Dark Eldar ships blow up in a purple haze. The plan worked, and the Harlequins were to thank for it. Admirable work, Troop Master, Macha said as she spoke to him using her Farseer powers. There was a pause before the Harlequin responded. A pleasure, Farseer. However, we would have suffered way more if it were not for the Doomslayer assisting us. So you truly were correct. Where is he now? Macha asked. There was a chuckle before the Troop Master spoke. I can imagine he's about to give the Dark Eldar leader a very bad time. Torture of Isha. In truth, the Doomslayer was still waiting impatiently for the grav lift to reach its destination as he tapped his foot to the side. After a minute or so, it finally reached its location before opening up, revealing a few guards who immediately raised their splinter rifles. Doom chuckled again, nothing like a little stress relief after a long elevator ride. He thought before rushing forward. His now signature bolt pistol materialized within his hands as he shot, and Dark Eldar in the shoulder as it was blasted off. The Dark Eldar yelled in pain before Doom punched the warrior right in the face, throwing his headless body backwards. The rest attempted to back away before Doom turned around, plasma gun in hand, as he rapidly fired it into the retreating guards, mowing them down without mercy as pieces of their bodies were picked apart by the deadly blue projectiles. After finishing the guards off, he turned towards the huge set of black metal doors before drawing back his foot and kicking it. The doors burst open, revealing a dark and crude throne room. Doom looked around before the chair, staring out to space, turned around, revealing an elegant black armored Dark Eldar, along with a woman who was chained up by the neck. Doom scoffed. Guy probably enjoys the smell of his own piss, he thought. So, this is the Mon K that has supposedly wrought me down. The Trueborn said as he stood up. Two figures came from the shadows behind him, one of them revealing to be a large snake-like alien with two pairs of arms that held a variety of weaponry. The other was an imposing Dark Eldar warrior carrying a clave as it glowed with green runes. Doom sighed, looking at the ground before looking back up. All right, here's the deal. You don't fight back. And I'll try to not do what I did to that pretty boy doctor down in the torture deck. Doom said. The Trueborn chuckled evilly. That homunculi was a fool. Kill him, my retainers. The Trueborn said before reclining back in his seat. Within a second, the Snake Man immediately slithered forward, guns blazing with two splinter pistols in one pair and two deadly-looking blades in the other. The Incubi followed closely behind it, yet was more cautious than his comrade. The splinter fire just bounced off Doom's armor before he hung his head down. Damn shame. Before taking out his own gun, he fired the shotgun directly at the SLYTH as the creature grunted in discomfort as its armor miraculously absorbed the shot. Guess you can dash. The creature's arms acted up as it attempted to slice the Doomslayer into pieces. He deftly avoided it, not wanting to scratch his armor before he felt something smack him in the side. The Incubi attempted to slice Doom by the midsection by swinging the clave at his hip. It, however, only made the Marine stumble to the ground. Damn, the other warrior is too damn smart. As he deftly avoided getting chopped from above as the Incubi brought his blade, cleaving the ground where Doom's body was just at. Doom knew that the Incubus was using the SLYTH as a means to distract Doom before chopping in. He needed to finish this fight quickly. However, a coil quickly wrapped around his leg before Doom found himself pulled backwards into the face of the smiling serpent. Immediately, its coils began to tighten around him, constricting his arms and body as it squeezed tighter and tighter. There is no use struggling Mon K. Once a SSLYTH has tightened his coils, his prey is surely to die. The Trueborn said as the SSLYTH's arms slowly brought its blades forward. It was then the pupils of Doom's eyes dilated, his muscles tensed, and his teeth gritted. Okay, now I'm fucking pissed. Immediately, the coils around Doom began to open up as the Marine slowly pushed his arms outward. The SSLYTH's reptilian pupils widened in surprise before attempting to slash at the Marine as he was immobile, but to no avail as the Doomslayer caught the scaly hand before seemingly without effort tore it off in anger. The lizard screeched out in agony as green blood spurted from the wound. Doom immediately shot his other hand forward before grabbing it by the lower jaw. The lizard attempted to pull away from the threat, but Doom brought its head in close, grabbing the upper jaw with his other hand, slowly beginning to pull his arms outwards as the lizard struggled with a giant amount of effort. Its limbs and coils flailed around the place, but to no avail. The jaw of the creature slowly began to give way before Doom grunted, pulling apart the lizard's jaw as it attempted to screech with what was left of its mouth before Doom tore off its head. Green blood splattered on his armor as the rest of the SSLYTH's coils around him loosened, dropping the Doomslayer to the floor. The Incubi quickly got over his shock before attempting to strike down Doom with his clave, only for the Marine to grab the power blade before growling to the Incubi's face. His right hand backhanded the Incubi. The Dark Eldar's helmet was torn right off his face from the sheer force. The Eldar sputtered out red blood before Doom pushed him back, walking up to him with shotgun in hand and pressing the barrel against the Dark Eldar's glaring face. At least you faced it like a man, Doom said before pulling the trigger. The Incubi's head was now gone in a spurt of flesh as his body slumped over. Now where was I? The Marine said before turning back to the chair, only that the Trueborn wasn't there. The slave girl was clearly taken as well. Son of a dash. Immediately, Doom rushed forward, knocking the spiky throne out of the way before peering down a secret escape hatch. Without further ado, the Marine followed in, passing what appeared to be the scumbag's bedroom as it was adorned with various battle trophies and weaponry. Doom paid it no heed as he bashed through the metal door, just as Muguth, holding the struggling slave as a form of a bullet shield, was activating a webway portal. Muguth turned to see the Doomslayer. Ugh, I cannot believe your insolence. You destroyed my entire operation, and you still have the gall to go after me. The Dark Eldar was just about to retreat through the portal until the slave broke out of his grasp with force as her face seethed with anger. The Dark Eldar's face twisted in surprise before she threw a punch directly into his face. Years of training under the Adeptus Sororitas came into effect as the Dark Eldar stumbled from the force of the punch. This allowed Doom all the time to open fire at the control panel, which kept the webway open, effectively shutting it off. No, the Trueborn yelled as he reached a hand out to what was his salvation. He didn't see Doom coming as he rushed past the woman before drawing back a foot. Mugad's eyes widened. Doom kicked his right foot directly into the Trueborn's groin. The Dark Eldar was silent before wordlessly falling to the ground. His upper body pressed against it as he attempted to breathe. Doom chuckled. "Aren't you supposed to be happy? I thought you guys were into pain." Before laughing hysterically, the slave came back a second later with a bolter from the other room. She gestured Doom to move as she brought the bolter to bear upon Muggoth as he raised a hand in an attempt to bargain for his life. "Emperor, take you. Xeno scum," the Sister of Battle said before pulling the trigger. Immediately the bolter fired. Bits and pieces of the Trueborn were flung all over the place. She kept at it until he was surely dead. She lowered the gun before breathing heavily. Doom whistled. "Damn, couldn't have done it better myself. I was going through the whole ship for that asshole." The sister looked at him in confusion before her face lightened up. "I must thank you, sir," Jones said as she gestured to know his name. "Doom, just call me Doom," the Marine said as he attempted to not stare at her cleavage. She smiled in relief. "Then you may call me Joan," she said as she rubbed the red mark around her neck. "Though I must ask, who sent you?" Doom took off his helmet before scratching the back of his head. "Chem? Nobody really, just a bunch of these assholes decided attacking the ship I was on was a good idea," the Marine said before coughing. "Now, I think I spotted this suit back there." Joan's eyes widened. "My power armor. Thank the Emperor," before she rushed past Doom and into the Dark Eldar's room. The sound of crashing was heard. Doom followed in after her. "Power armor? So are you like a dash?" Doom tried to remember the word that Kaldor told him about. "A space marine?" Joan turned around, now wearing a black jumpsuit as she tossed away the revealing bra and loincloth that her other hand held. "Of course not. I am Adeptus Sororitas, a female servant of his divine grace. So you're basically a space nun." "And what?" Joan asked as she slid on her shoulder plate. "ASP. Actually, never mind. How did you end up here?" Doom asked. Joan immediately stopped before hanging her head low. "Teach touchy subject? Okay, I'll drop it. That asshole won't be bothering you anymore." Doom said. No, it's fine. My company was caught by a wretched Xeno ambush. My sisters and I were forcefully captured. I am not sure what happened to the rest of them." She replied unsurely before strapping on a boot. "Regardless, it is a miracle that the Xeno scum didn't claim me. I can still fight for my order," Joan said as she put on the breastplate. "Although, I have a few questions. How, in the Emperor's name, were you able to take them on? You're not even in Astartes as far as I am concerned," she asked in a curious tone. "It's a long story," was all Doom said. The Sister of Battle merely shrugged. "Very well. I look forward to hearing this story," before sliding on a gauntlet before asking her next question. "How did your armor absorb those Dark Eldar rifles like nothing? There is no armor like yours known to the Imperium of Man," Joan said as she looked at him in the eyes. Well, it's self-made," Doom said, lying about the armor's true origin. "If so, then you should approach a tech priest with it. Finely engineered armor like that can save millions of lives," the woman said before taking a sabbat pattern helmet off the shelf. The two red visors of the mask gave the woman an intimidating look with her full armor set on. "Shall we proceed?" before picking up her weapon. Doom put on his own helmet before walking alongside her. "Yeah, but me and the others should have cleared out the rest of the ship, so you don't need to worry about getting attacked," Doom said as they came out of the trapdoor. The carnage of the room was apparent as they passed the corpses of both the Selwyke and Incubis before walking on the grav lift. It took a second before the elevator trudged down. Then I look forward to meeting them. I need to return to the temple and report to the Inquisition. They will want to hear about this." The grav lift finally reached the weapons deck control room. Arlecchino turned around from the council. Doom. My men just evacuated the dash." The jester immediately paused. Doom raised an eye before he looked to Joan, who held her bolter up at him. The Marine instantly reacted, slapping the gun barrel down just as Joan pulled the trigger, shooting the floor below as the metal caved in from the explosive shot. Joan's helmeted head turned to Doom. He could already tell her face was full of disgust without even needing to see it. "What in the Emperor's name do you think you're doing?" Joan asked as she attempted to repoint her gun upwards. "What am I doing? What the fuck are you doing?" Doom said. Joan attempted to wrestle her bolter's grip from his hands, trying to enact the Emperor's will. "Now take your hand off my gun and dash." "No," Doom simply said, to which Joan seethed in rage. "Then I cannot believe it. To even think you were under his divine grace. You're nothing but a heretic," Joan said as she spat. Doom up until this point never felt any more pissed than what she just called him. Within a second, his metal hand shot up, grabbing her neck before lifting her up with ease. Joan gasped behind her helmet before she began struggling, her power armor scraping against the metal of the lift as she dropped her bolter. "Do not call me a heretic," Doom said through gritted teeth. "I have protected humanity from the horrors of hell since the beginning of time. I am the nightmare of demons, blessed by the Seraphim himself, and killer of the so-called Prince of Perfection." He began to apply pressure, cutting off her circulation. "You, however, clearly know nothing about me or the word you just used to describe me." She stopped moving before there was a lengthy pause before Arlecchino spoke. "Is she Dash?" "No, she's not, just unconscious. Let's get back to the ship," Doom said in a dark tone as he hoisted her form over her shoulder, picking up her bolter with his other hand. Arlecchino actually felt a tiny bit fearful. Never had he seen such a serious side to the Doomslayer. "Right this way, Doomslayer," the troopmaster said before walking out the metal door. The other Harlequins watched the blood-covered Doomslayer follow along before disappearing around the corner, unsure what to think of it. Chapter 12. Squigs and Chaos and Tau. Oh my, the Eye of Terror. The World Eater awoke as rage and hate was quickly pumped into him. He immediately stood up from his lying position. The place around him was in chaos. Blood ran through in giant rapids, each separated by mountains of skulls, whilst the sky looked as if it was on fire. The warrior smiled. Had he reached his goal? To finally fight in the blood-soaked fields of his god. "I'm afraid not, warrior," a booming voice said, as if reading his mind. The World Eater turned. The gigantic figure of Khorne stood higher than an imperial titan. His shadowy gaze burned straight through the Chaos Marine as his godly form radiated blood-lusting power. "For you see, although your deeds have been great in my name, even a mountain of skulls I have from your dedication." There was a pause before the voice continued. "You must prove yourself to me one last time if you wish to access these bloodied fields." The champion of Khorne kneeled before his god. Anything for the blood god." "Good," Khorne said. "Then find this mortal." A vision of a man wearing green armor appeared. "And give me his skull. Only then you shall ascend to demonhood." Karn the Betrayer woke up atop a pile of skulls he had recently claimed before passing out randomly. His Khornate berserkers that had joined him for carnage stood around in confusion. Within a second, he jumped down, his metal leggings thudded against the giant puddles of blood from the amount of dead Slainish Chaos Marines that didn't offer any challenge to the Khornate warband he joined. "Bring upon me the strongest of Chaos Lords. Khorne has gifted upon me a vision. Kill the green, armored mortal," the legendary warrior said as he lifted Gorechild in the air and revved it up, a call to violence. Immediately, the warriors of Khorne around him cheered to their blood god Khorne as they rallied behind Karn, yelling and screaming chants for their god. It was the calling of a new dark crusade. Blood for the blood god. Skulls for the skull throne. Rage against rage. Alionaretha's gift. The Doomslayer arrived back at the ship to see the reparation effort already in effect. A bunch of Dark Eldar corpses were piled by the side before being burned a blue fire, completely disintegrating the remains of them without leaving a trace. This allowed the mariners to repair and clean any of the damage from the ensuing fight. A few dead aspect warriors had their spirit stones taken as the precious jewels were taken below ship to a very closely guarded place. Doom walked through the airlock, kicking away a Dark Eldar body into the fire before walking onward with the unconscious Sister of Battle on his shoulder. A few warriors looked his way as he walked past them. They immediately backed up in shock. "What?" Doom asked before looking at his armor. "Oh." The color wasn't even green anymore, just pure red from the amount of blood that he had spilt from his enemies. Not only that, he bet he must have smelled really awful as well. "I would suggest to get your armor cleaned at the shower's Doomslayer. It is rather repugnant to look at," he heard a voice say before turning, revealing Machu walking with her singing spear in hand. The Doomslayer grumbled, "Sure. You guys got a place I can put her in?" Doom said as he gestured to the unconscious form on his shoulder. Machu raised an eyebrow. "There's a grav cell in the lower decks. My warriors shall take her to it," the Farseer said. Doom wordlessly walked past her into the grav lift. "By the way, I wish to thank you on behalf of my warriors. Word has it that you assisted a great deal in ending the battle." "Don't mention it," was all Doom said before pressing the button and heading down. The troopmaster came up beside the Farseer. "Farseer Machu, I would recommend too, not have your warriors criticize him in the foreseeable future," the Harlequin said before walking past her. Machu tilted her head in confusion before dismissing the thought and walking to where she was needed. Alionaretha's gift showers. Doom looked around in the expansive but empty stall ways of the shower room. The first armor piece he was removing was already his helmet as he plopped it down on a bench. He immediately occupied one of the stalls before turning on one of the strange faucets. Streams of water came pouring out as it splattered against his armor. However, even that wasn't enough, as the dried, flaky blood still remained on. The Marine grumbled as soon as he realized he would need to individually clean it off, something which he wasn't fond of. So without further ado, he went to work, grabbing a unique-looking sponge before attempting to scrub it off as he took off each individual piece. He took off the sponge in order to squeeze the blood out, only for half the sponge to look like it had been eaten off. Doom looked back at his armor before realizing that it was still covered in acid from the homunculus fight. Some of the compound dribbled off before corroding a hole in the metal floor. "Gah, shit!" Doom yelled before attempting to find another sponge. "Trouble?" a female voice asked from the next stall. Doom looked to the left stall with a hint of surprise before his attitude straightened. "Yeah, you don't happen to have anything that won't get destroyed by fucking acid?" There was a pause before the voice spoke. "Here," before a strange blue gel-like sponge was thrown over the stall door. "This should neutralize it." Doom recognized the voice. It belonged to Aeroleth, the howling banshee who seemed to dislike him. Why was she helping him now? "Thanks," was all the Marine said before applying the sponge to the chest piece. It worked like a charm as the acid seemed to dissipate, allowing for further clean of the armor. However, the Doomslayer raised an eye in suspicion. "What the hell is up with you today?" he asked as he cleaned out his shoulder pad. "Excuse me. You know, ever since I arrived on this goddamn ship, you pretty much treated me like the Antichrist," Doom said as he removed a wad of brain matter from the hidden kink of his gauntlet. "What gives?" There was a pause. "I was too harsh on you," the Eldar confessed. Doom chuckled. Harsh wasn't even a word for the Marine, considering how his life was. Constantly stuck between planes, fighting being his companion, and death being his only friend with the exception of Vega, of course. "What made you think that? Is that sarcasm or a question?" "Both." Aeroleth paused once more. Doom could imagine her smirking ironically. "Well, I believed I owed it to you for saving Eldar lives. First you attempted to not kill us, despite Killa Mincha kind attempting to make you his avatar. And for today, assisting in ending the battle so more could live to fight another day." There was another pause before she spoke. "Thank you." Doom washed out the last piece of his leggings before sliding it back on him, his form now shirtless as he cleaned off the rest of the armor with various scratches from demonic entities adorned his skin. Both his palms, however, adorned demonic-looking runes. They were there for a reason which he didn't like. He quickly stepped out of the stall, putting his now clean and shiny armor back on. He spotted aspect armor lying on a bench, possibly belonging to Aeroleth. "Well, for whatever it's worth. It was good talking to you too. Now I gotta check up with Machu to see what the fuck we're gonna do with the guys we saved." The female Eldar didn't reply behind the stall door as the faucet for her booth was still on. Apparently, she was still deep in thought. Doom simply shrugged before leaving the shower room. When the Doomslayer left, Aeroleth let out a quiet sigh. Alionareth's gift bridge. "Ah, Doomslayer. I'm glad to see that the whole episode with the escape pod didn't end your life," the captain said, looking away from the Farser when Doom walked off the lift. "Well, get used to it. That's only the beginning with the amount of crazy shit I'm probably gonna do." The captain cringed before coughing awkwardly, looking back to the Farser. "As I was saying, Farser, there is still the obvious matter at hand." Macha nodded before turning to the Marine. "I had a vision of the future." Doom raised an eye. "Wait, so not only are you a psychic, you're a fucking fortune teller now." Awa dash. "Listen, that does not matter. What matters is that we need to prepare. Another major battle will occur soon, involving some form of demonic intrusion," the Farser said. The Doomslayer chuckled. "Good." The captain and Farser seemed a bit uncomfy at the Doomslayer's willingness. The captain coughed again before speaking. "Regardless, there is also another matter. The slaves." "Yeah? What about them?" Doom questioned. "Well, you see, we are admittedly a bit surprised about the willingness to rescue them." The captain continued. And there's a pressing matter on what to do with them." "So what do you usually do with them?" "Put them down." Doom paused for a few seconds before speaking. "What? Why the fuck would you do that?" The captain merely sighed before looking at the ground. The Farser spoke, however, because it would be too dangerous for them. They would be persecuted by their own people. "To be honest, we will be doing them a mercy rather than what the Imperial Inquisition would do to them." "Jesus Christ," Doom said as he looked up in thought before looking back down. "How about we let them decide then? They have already told us their choice, although with great distrust. They wish to be dropped off at the nearest planet, Lethe." "Wait, what about those blue guys?" "They're sure as hell not human." "The Tau? We will have to see what to do with them. As of now, they have dash within a second of warning of the ship's blared." Immediately, the captain turned, a serious look on his face. "Mariner, what is the situation?" "I don't know, Captain, but we're surrounded somehow." "Surrounded? Impossible. Not even dash a dozen of red manta ray, like ships appeared in front of the window, unless they had stealth drives. Isha, damn it all. Immediately the screen opened up, revealing a slightly aged-looking Tau, holding next to him a power sword by the blade that was longer than himself. I am Commander Farsight, and I have come for my people. Eldar, the Tau simply said. Torture of Isha. The abandoned torture deck was shrouded in black, the deceased bodies of Dark Eldar laid strewn about the place, still mangled by the Doomslayer. It was in the doors at the back immediately blew up in a fiery explosion before a bunch of yelling was heard. Blood Flag coming in first as he raised his choppa in the air, only to slowly lower it as soon as he looked around the place. Atzok, there's no pansies around here, ta crump, cause they've already been crumped, the pirate war boss said before turning around. False alarm, boysy. The captain said before walking forward in a sulking mood. Brickfist, followed by Spookums, and then finally Mr. Nailbrain came out the doorway as they looked around the place. Blood Flag was inspecting in dead Dark Eldar. It looked as if someone had ripped open the top half of its body. Spookums held a key item, however, a small squig that seemed to be struggling in his grasp as the creature growled and kicked its legs at the Orc commando. Gah, why'd we ave ta bring the squig? Shut your mouth, Spookums, Blood Flag said before looking around the place. Spookums immediately shut up as he concentrated on controlling the squig as it struggled even more. Geesh, looks like some of does spiky boysy bin air, Nailbrain said as he looked around the place. Blood Flag merely muttered, No, this ain't no spiky boysy doin'. Otherwise they would ave their stupid altars all over the place. The captain said, Whoever did dis did it in orky-like fashion. Just the killin' and crumpin'. Bloodflag said as he held up a Dark Eldar body. His arm looked as if it was broken in 3 different angles before his head had been bashed in. Come on, boysy. Let's get to the bottom of this. The other 3 nodded before walking onwards, reaching a set of metal doors. Blood Flag roared before kicking it down, revealing a large arena-like room filled with the fleshy and char body parts. Offset. Looks like there was a good fine air, Blood Flag said. A giant pile of blown-up gray flesh laid in the middle, while surrounded by a bunch of dead racks that looked as if they had been bludgeoned, shot up, and then roasted simultaneously. Brickfist immediately used his rocket pack to propel himself upwards as Nailbrain checked out the nearest council as he grumbled to himself. Spookums attempted to hold the small squig steady. Nailbrain, find out what is Zog appeared here. On it, boss, the mech boy said, after tinkering with the council before smacking it with his crudely made wrench. The mech boy was able to get it working before it displayed an Eldar video feed. It seemed that the camera was situated behind the homunculi as it stared downwards, the camera perfectly capturing the arena as the green armored human fought. The orcs watched as they witnessed the marine absolutely slaughter the racks before the grotesque punched him from behind. Oh, that was a proper smack, Blood Flag said. However, as they watched on, a green ball of plasma came out from the hole, destroying the last of the racks before hitting the grotesque, blasting a hole in its chest. The creature was then finished off by the marine. The green armored figure jumped up on the platform where the camera resided at, confronting the homunculi before the footage just ended. That's all we got, Captain. Huh. Now what was that green weapon right there? I want one of those, Blood Flag asked. Dunno, looks like something a real mad mech would make, Nailbrain said. Whatever, we found our Yumi Mork and Gork we're talking about. Now allzy we gotta do is dash. Boss, you might want to see this. Blood Flag, Nailbrain, Spookums looked up to see something drop to the floor before the impact splattered blood on all of them. Brickfist, Yazzie got blood on me favorite hat. The knob looked over the railing. Sorry, boss. Blood Flag mumbled before looking at it. The body of the homunculi in the video before, now with the arm and head separated from the body instead. Now the orcs definitely knew what happened to the Torture Master. Looks like the Git's brain got smashed open after being bashed with his arm. Spookums pointed out. The squig stopped squirming now. This time it was sniffing around the place, as if it smelled food. Spookums released the squig. Blood Flag yelled. The commando dropped it before the creature began hobbling towards the corpse of the Dark Eldar. It opened its gaping mouth before taking a chunk out of the dead Eldar's thin skin. Now this'll help us find the Yumi. After all, the tiny squig is a pointer, Bloodflag said. The squig stopped eating before calming down and looking at one direction. All right, boysy, the squig's got the scent. Now all Weezy got to do is follow it, the captain yelled before turning around. Brickfist jumped from the platform, his metal boots thudding against the ground while Spookums lifted the squig back up. To his delight, it no longer squirmed. This time the squig seemed keen on facing one direction and one direction only. The direction to doom. Chapter 13. Complications and Reunions. Alionaretha's Gift Bridge. The frowning face of the alien stared at them, waiting for an answer. Violashova of the Farsight Enclave I presume. That is correct, Eldar. However, let us skip the pleasantries. A whole two-ship full of my Tau disappear in this sector. I believe your kin have something to do with it. So where are they? Farsight asked as his red eyes glared. There is no need for any hostility, Tau. We have no outstanding issues. Let us keep it that dash. The captain was interrupted as Doom had enough. Holy shit, people. Can we stop with the bullshit and get straight to the fucking point? Doom said before turning to the commander Farsight. If you want to know, yo, we fucked up a bunch of slaving assholes. Your people are down in the below decks in case you're wondering. The commander straightened his face to check if he was seeing properly. Hey, Gula, never in my life would I think I would ever see a human work alongside a dash. Do you fucking want them back or not? Doom said in a pissed of tone. The two Eldar looked at the Doomslayer with a hint of surprise. Ashova visibly flinched a tiny bit from the man's outburst before recomposing himself. Ah, yes, of course. The Eldar captain politely coughed before speaking. Pull up your ship next to Alinoreth's gift. We're already having our crew escort them to the airlock for your soldiers to pick up. The hardened gaze of the Tau commander retook position. Very well, Eldar. But if this is some sort of trick, my ships will ensure your deaths will be swift, the commander said before cutting off the line. Doom immediately turned around before walking towards the grav lift. Where do you think you're going, Doomslayer? Machu asked. Doom turned around when he reached the lift before pressing the bottom floor. I need a few questions answered. I'll tag along in a bit, Doom said as he took out a tiny papyrus from his pocket before the lift went down. Alinoreth's gift lower decks. In Dedicato Imperatum Ultra Articulum Mortis. Any idea what that means, Kane? Doom thought as the elevator reached the floor, taking off his left gauntlet in the meanwhile. Doom's hand grew red as a tiny bit of blood dripped off of it. The Eldar god spoke. Do I look as if I speak your dirty Monkey language? Wait, are you implying that you guys speak a different language? How the fuck have I been understanding you people? Doom said to the god of war as he walked down the expansive corridor into another room, briefly passing a few Taus who were being escorted by two dire avengers. The blue-skinned aliens looked at the Doomslayer in awe, possibly because of his deeds that they witnessed before they were ushered on. Another small blessing given by me. However, if you give me complete control, then I can dash. Nope, not gonna happen, was all Doom thought before putting his gauntlet back on. He had reached the prison room anyways. Walking in, he was met with the sight of a very pissed and gravity-suspended sister of battle. Doom simply stood there as they both looked at each other. The Doomslayer coughed in an awkward sense before speaking. Hi. Joan did not say a word behind her helmet. The Aspect Warriors hadn't even the need to take off her armor. The Grav prison was already enough to keep her contained. Look, I know you're angry with that whole choking business. Unless you're into that. But that's not what's important. Doom said. Joan's gaze could have burned a hole in her Sabbath helmet. Then what is? I'm already disgusted at the mere thought of talking to you. Fine then, be disgusted. The Marine said. He took out the papyrus. But at least tell me, what the hell does this mean? He tossed the roll of paper to her. Joan witnessed the floating scroll before hesitatingly taking it. Her face scrunched up in confusion before a bit of surprise. Where did you find this? On the slaver ship, some guy in power armor who looked like he was on fire gave it to me. By the Emperor, it can't be possible. It just can't be. Yeah, can we stop with the shock factor and tell me what the fuck it is? I'm kind of running strict on time here. This is an inscription for the Emperor beyond the point of death, a chosen quote by the now dead Firehawks chapter. The Sister of Battle said. Chapter? Like from a book. Doom asked. Emperor's Throne. How are you this daft? Chapter, as in a Space Marine chapter. How do you not know what I refer to? Joan said in anger. Doom merely shrugged. Let's just say that I'm not from around here. Doom said before motioning to the papyrus that he had given her. So what the fuck is so important about it? I have an idea, but no way in the Emperor am I going to tell a Herat dash. Immediately, Doom tossed something at her. The surprised Sister of Battle caught the red bag, even as she laid suspended by gravity. Go on, open it. Joan glared at him in suspicion before slowly opening it. The face of perfection stared back, wide-eyed from the death that was inflicted on the Chaos God. The Sister of Battle gasped in shock before batting it away with her hand. The amount of warp taint emanating off of it was impossible. Gah! Emperor's taint! Joan yelled. Doom caught it as it rolled to the gravity before replacing it inside the bag. Yeah, it's the head of Slaanesh. What? The head of Slaanesh, I ripped it off her. His head? Fuck, I don't know. Regardless, I crossed the 6 circles of seduction and into his palace. Joan didn't even know how to process this info. Impossible. What you say is heresy to the highest degree. No mortal can overcome the warp unless received assistance from the ruinous powers. Doom sighed before cracking his neck and knuckles. Well then listen here, Joan. I don't know what gave you the idea, but I'm not someone who jerks off with barbed wire. I, the Doomslayer, the slaughterer and boogeyman of those so-called demons. And traveling to places like hell is my specialty. Don't believe me? Fine by me. But I'll tell you what, Dash. Doom's body language immediately stiffened. Don't call me a fucking heretic, or I will hurt you, was all the Doom said before slowly crossing both arms together. Joan never felt fear, even against the worst of foes, but she felt that he was truly being serious. The Sister of Battle recomposed herself as best as she could. I find there's rumors that the Firehawks live on in some way after their entire chapter just disappeared in the year 963 of the 41st millennium. Joan paused as if finding the right words. Randomized aiding of chapters alike, turning the tide of battles. All with the same detail. Unknown space marines wearing fiery power armor. Like a Legion of the Damned. Doom said to himself. Well, thanks, the marine said before turning around to walk outside. Joan sighed in irritation as she floated there, watching the marine walk off. However, Doom turned his head. Oh, and by the way, we'll drop you off at Lethe. You'll be safe there? Hopefully. The Sister of Battle was honestly surprised at the Doomslayer's statement before he left the room, leaving her to her own thoughts. Alionaretha's gift. It is familiar. The conversation you just had with that mortal. Doom was a bit caught off guard with the god of war speaking within his head as he walked onto the grav lift. What the hell are you on about? When I held Isha as prisoner, including her husband Kurnus, I felt envious. Envious? I honestly could not give a shit about your feelings right now, Kane. Kine's anger was felt through Doom's mind for a split second before the god of war sighed. Just hear me out, mortal. There's a lot at stake here. Fine then. Doom paused. Was she hot, though? Yes, I suppose she was on fire. I placed the both of them in a pit to burn after their violation of speaking to mortals. Kine said, clearly not getting the reference. Doom felt like slamming his head into a wall before thinking again. As in, did you want to fuck her? I what? Of course not. Kine said as if he was offended. Oh, okay. Then you prefer the other guy, Kurnus IT dash. This conversation is over, Mon K. Cease now. Doom chuckled before the grav lift went up. Kine was silent, but he slowly began to speak again. I cannot quite place it, but as I watched them, they still somehow held hope, despite what I inflicted upon them. Probably cause they loved each other. It tends to make Disney miracles happen. Doom thought as the elevator reached the halfway point. Love? What is this love you speak of? Hila Minshakine, the Eldar god of war, fire, and murder, was asking what love was. Doom scratched the back of his helmet, unsure what to say. Well, fuck, I don't know. It's like an attraction, I guess, like a good feeling. An attraction, a good feeling? Like when I kill those who wrong me. Jesus fucking Christ. You're goddamn hopeless, you know that. I demand you tell me. Doom straightened his gauntlets and leggings. The elevator was nearing the last floor. Find it out your goddamn self. Doom said to himself before the grav lift arrived. I got more important shit to do. And with that, the grav lift reached the platform. Kine did not respond. Apparently, he was fuming, but did not show it, instead sulking back to the confines of his hand. The Farser had already been waiting as she oversaw the reunified slaves as they were escorted through the airlock. Where were you, she asked. Busy, was all Doom said before walking forward. Cadia, it seems another victory without any losses against the cultist hordes is at hand, Sir Creed. Congratulations, the lieutenant said. The Lord Castellan did not respond, instead analyzing the battlefield. And again, still they did nothing as we cut them down. What in the Emperor's name gives? Perhaps they were stunned by the valor of our soldiers? Creed merely chuckled, as if, I have warred against these disgusting degenerates ever since I was a child. But I know as a fact that is not the case. Creed looked at the sprawled and dead Slainish cultists and thought, they're devoid of feeling or emotion, as if they have lost the will to live or fight. Does that not seem strange to you? The Castellan asked his top lieutenants. They merely shook their heads. Creed scoffed before looking back at the corpses. He had still remembered the words of the Inquisitor, warning him to keep a watchful eye. It was then he looked up. Something's not right. Call on the Admiral and tell him to bolster defenses. Bolster defenses? Lord Castellan, there is nothing to dash. Don't question orders. Do it no dash. Uzarker Creed hadn't even finished before the gruff-led veteran shouts were interrupted by a different force. A humongous warp portal opened up with varying arrays of spiky and angular designs. Some looked almost imperial in nature were it not for the reddish color. They left a long red trail behind them as they warped into the stratosphere of Cadia. Creed wordlessly rushing forward to the command post. Varying degrees of imperial officers and servo skulls were busy deciphering what was happening. Get me online with the Admiral now, the general yelled. The nearest officer quickly handed him a Voxcaster as Creed took it. Admiral, we have a serious situation at hand. Get your ships to planetside and we can dash. The Lord Castellan hadn't even finished before the Chaos ships glowed with purple energy. Down! Creed yelled before ducking the rest of the officers, hitting the floor before a flash of purple light covered the room. The Chaos ships were no longer there. Emperor forbid, is everyone okay? Creed asked. The officers looked fine as they groggily stood up with no sign of mutations. The light didn't seem to affect them. Creed looked up before speaking through the Voxcaster. Admiral, are you there? Creed asked. There was a bit of static before a voice spoke up. We're fine. However, there seems to be another problem. That Chaos fleet warped out. Creed grunted. I know. If this is the start of a new Black Crusade, then Cadia would be in the battle for its life right about now. Then why leave? The Admiral asked. Because this is clearly not meant to be a crusade. That was a precision strike fleet that they have set up, against whom, or what I cannot tell, but keep a vigilant eye out. Very well, Emperor protects. Lord Castellan, the Admiral said before closing off the line. Emperor protects, was all Creed said before looking back out to the endless black pit of space. Something was going on, and he didn't like it one bit. Aegis of fear. Where is he? Where is the green, armored mortal? Karn yelled as he stuttered around the place. The Chaos Lord merely sat on his throne as he chuckled lightly. Within due time, Karn. However, now we must consult the ruinous powers and have them guide us. Bah, then hurry. I grow restless, Korn said before turning around and stomping out and slamming the door behind him, denting the metal. A few Chaos Marines gave way, bowing their heads respectively towards the champion of Korn. Karn merely grunted before walking down the halls of the ruinous ship as heretics were at work, corrupting and twisting the ship's machine spirit in preparation for the upcoming battle. He was about to turn the other corridor until he spied a couple of Slainish Marines that were staring at a wall. They simply just stood there. The heretics were careful to not bump into them. I admit, it almost saddens me. Almost, a voice said. Karn turned in annoyance towards the figure, revealing what seemed to be a Chaos Sorcerer, wielding an ornate set of horns on his helmet as he levitated lightly off the ground. Karn simply ignored the sorcerer and walked past him, not caring for whatever. The sorcerer held a hand, stopping the giant berserker from walking forward as Karn slowly turned his head to the right, his eyes now blazing with anger. Did the sorcerer have a death wish? I believe you are the famous Karn, champion of Khorne. The sorcerer merely lowered his hand before holding it out. Ozek Armin of the Thousand Suns Legion. Karn merely looked at the sorcerer before slapping away his hand. I do not care for what you are. Begone, sorcerer, or face my wrath. Karn said silently before walking away, Gorechild in hand. Armin chuckled lightly. Very well. The champion of Khorne huffed before walking away. The powerful Chaos Sorcerer waited a moment before speaking up again. However, do you not find it strange that the gods of chaos want this green armored man? Karn stopped at the words before slowly turning around. What do you know? The red-armored Chaos Marine asked. That it cannot be pure coincidence that this, Ozek said as he pointed towards the blank and still Slainish Marines, less animated than the sorcerer's golem, occurs before I received a vision, the capture of this green, armored mortal. Karn tightened his grip on his chain axe before slowly turning around, walking towards the lift. Strange, was all the Berserker said before entering the lift. Because Khorne wants him dead, was all Karn said as the doors closed, his green visor burned with hatred. Armin narrowed his eyes. This was going to be a problem. Kalyan Bijel. As soon as Doom entered the Tau ship, he had to duck as a drone whizzed right over his head, quickly scanning him before moving on to the rest of the slaves. Apparently, paranoia ran deep into pretty much every race as they had to wait until the doors opened. A dozen red armored firecasts had their weapons out as they pointed them directly at the few Eldar warriors. A few howling banshees, along with a squad of dire avengers, had their weapons out in response to the hostility of the Tau soldiers. Aeroleth silently stood there alongside her comrades, her banshee mask ignoring the Marines' entrance. Holster your weapons. We are not here to fight, but to return, Machu said. However, they seemed to be still distrustful. It was only until a giant bipedal mech wielding an equally giant blade came out from behind the Tau soldiers. The battlesuit looked at the firecast and nodded before the Tau lowered their weapons into a neutral stance. The red-painted battlesuit knelt down before opening up, revealing Commander Farsight himself. I am surprised you kept to your word knowing your kind, Farsight said. Although it was an insult, the statement seemed to be that of curiosity. Machu merely frowned. You do not know our kind, Commander. Let's keep it at that. This exchange is beneficial for the both of us. How so? What is a lone Eldar cruiser doing in this sector of space? The Farser spoke again. However, Doom was already bored as he turned away from the two conversing species. He spotted Aeroleth again before walking to her. So, Doom said as he came up alongside the howling Banshee Exarch. Who the hell are these Tau guys anyway? Araleth pretended to ignore him before the silence made her give in. They are a smart yet naive race, filled to the brim with all sorts of uses of technology, such as ion and pulse weapons. What about those drones? Doom said as another whizzed past his head. Araleth paused before speaking. Those are not mere drones, Doomslayer. Each contain an artificial intelligence of sorts. Doom looked at the hovering drone before it alighted next to a console, integrating itself with it. So if I were to, let's say, forcefully put a highly advanced 8.I with a network system so advanced that it has its own philosophy to it, then would the drone still work? What? Nothing. Doom said before quietly walking away as the Banshee gave him a confused look before dismissing herself from him. He scanned the Tau ship, taking note of its angular yet elegant design patterns it held. Not as spacious as the Eldar ship, but spacious enough. His eyes spotted another one of the drone from before as it connected itself to another random console. Doom looked left and then right before slowly walking forward, the Tau and the Eldar leaders too engrossed in conversation to notice the man as he inspected the back of the drone. Araleth caught sight of him as she turned her head at him. The Marine scoffed before experimentally touching the back of the drone. "What are you doing, mortal?" A voice asked. Doom sighed. It was kind again. "Nothing. Just checking this thing out." The Doomslayer thought before quietly opening up a back panel, revealing a few chips and wires. It was a miracle that most Tau, or even Eldar, hadn't even noticed him. It was then he saw a completely empty slot, looking as if it was meant to contain a chip, but was removed by some omnipotent force. Correct me if I am wrong, but I do not believe Dash. I don't give a fuck what you think, Kane. The Marine thought, adding emphasis on the god's given name to show his annoyance and disdain. Doom could feel a searing sensation in his hand before it quickly dissipated. Kine was clearly pissed but couldn't do anything about it. Doom silently chuckled before reaching into his pocket, producing a small chip that contained the backup of Vega. "Hey, where are you, Dash?" A Tau Earth cast caught sight of the Doomslayer who had been tampering with the drone. The Marine cursed. "Hope this works," he merely thought before slotting the chip in. Within an instant, the drone acted up. Rivets of energy sparked out of it as its visor cracked. Machu and Farsight immediately abstained from their conversation as they watched the console and lights go haywire before descending into an emergency yellow lighting. Automatically, everyone went in a high alert. The Tau first, as they shouted in anger before raising their weapons. Commander Farsight's battlesuit closed back up before raising his blade defensively. "I knew I was wrong to trust your kind. Clearly you have sabotaged our systems." Farsight spat as his mech stood menacingly in front of the Farser. Machu showed no emotion. However, she raised her singing spear in a combat stance as her eyes glowed with blue energy. "I'm warning you, Commander. It is not of our Dash. I'm afraid it would be my doing," a robotic voice said. A singular Tau drone, along with Doom, walked in the middle of the two groups. The Marine took off his helmet with a smile on his face. "I would recommend to cease hostilities, however." The polite drone said its singular optical visor was cracked, as it would be non-beneficial for both parties. Commander Farsight looked at the drone for a second before speaking. "What manner of AI are you? You are not one of ours," the commander said in an accusing manner. "Nope." Doom spoke up. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Vega. Your average A.I expert on demons. Hell," Dash said before leaning on the drone like a table, before continuing. "And a damn fine gentleman." "Greetings," Vega said as the drone's tiny metal crab-like arms seemed to give a thumbs up. Doom chuckled before it awkwardly died down as he noticed everyone staring at him. Doom coughed. "Oh yeah, and I think I might have used up all of your ship's power. 2.4 terawatts of it," the Marine said before scratching the back of his head. Machu facepalmed. Chapter 14, Emotions and All That Other Shit. Kamarak. "A master, there is a Dash." The slave was ruthlessly shoved out of the way by a taller incubus as he stood menacingly. "Trueborn's fleet returns. What's left of it, that is." Asdrabeel Vect lazily opened an eye from his bed, his slave girl still asleep beside him. "Humph. So that idiot did fail," the Dark Eldar said before sitting up on his bed. "However, you might want to listen to what the survivors say. You might find it interesting." Vect merely shrugged before standing up, sliding his intimidating crown. "Very well. Let's hear it," the Archon said as the incubus nodded before holding out his hand, opening a holographic link. The live footage showed a badly banged-up warrior. His once flawless pale skin held burn wounds and scars everywhere. "Cabalite, this better be worth my time or else," Vex said. The warrior flinched a tiny bit, but kept a straight face. "I Dash. Yes, of course, Supreme Overlord," the Eldar said before coughing. "Our trueborn Lord Muggud is dead." Vex suppressed a chuckle. This day couldn't get any better. He was killed by a green armored human. Now Vex was confused. "A human? I thought that fool was hunting after our craft world cousins. Everything was going according to plan until he showed up. Now Vecht was interested. And what did he do? What did he do? He massacred us, slaughtered us. We almost thought the fury of Kaine, Khorne, was upon us. The warrior said in his mad ramblings. Vecht pondered to himself. And this was no space marine? Just a green-armored human? It sounded to me you were finished by a guardsman who for some reason was working with our craft world cousins. I can assure you, Supreme Overlord, this human man was no ordinary guardsman. The Kabbalite said in desperation. Vecht gave a little thought before shutting down the link. Green-armored human, Vecht said to himself before donning his dark armor. Call every Archon to my council. Every. The incubi asked. Vecht nodded. Yes, and tell them it is of dire importance. The Supreme Overlord said before staring out to the black spires of Comarak. He needed answers, not the ravings of Psycho. Just who was this green-armored human? Kalyan Bijel. The power is back online dash, Commander Farsight said before turning to Doomguy. But you have a lot to explain, especially about that AI. I believe the Doomslayer's choice to activate me was in everyone's best interest. How so? It was Farser Machu that spoke this time. She glared hatefully at Doom. You almost caused a firefight to break out because of your reckless action, Doomslayer. The Farser said. Hey, I said I'm sorry. Besides, if I want to fight against the asshats of chaos, I need a guy who can tell me about them. Doom said before gesturing to Vega. And that's where Vega comes in. Right, pal? Doom asked. The drone nodded. As a matter of fact, I can already tell you that this whole entire reality is the same one you were banished from. Doom nodded, see exit dash, before suddenly turning to the AI in surprise. Wait, Vega, are you fucking with me? I cannot perform sexual intercourse, Doomslayer. I am physically in Kappa dash. No, I mean as in, this being the same reality? Of course. What is the machine talking about? This time, it was Aeroleth speaking up in an annoyed tone. Doom ignored her as he stared wide-eyed behind his helmet. How? Doom said in shock. How in the hell did everything become so fucked? What happened when I was gone? The drone with its crab-like arms merely shrugged. I have gathered info sparingly from the Tau archives. I have also accessed almost every stream of info, even extending to planet Earth. Farsight looked at Doom. What? The drone could have gathered crucial military dash. Shut up. Doom whispered before looking back at the drone. And your assumptions were wrong, Doomslayer. You have not traveled into an alternate plane of reality, but instead you have traveled around 40,000 years into the future. Doom paused as he took in the info. So that's it then, was all the Marines said before turning around. Everything I worked so hard to prevent, and the same shit just happens again and again. Doom said, fuck it, I need some time to think. Come on, Vega. The Doomslayer said before wordlessly walking away, the drone following closely behind him, leaving the rest of a surprised Eldar and Tau behind. Aegis of Fear. How goes progress? Armin, the Chaos Lord asked. His throne was still shrouded in darkness, just as before. I'm receiving small hints along the way, clues within the warp, each pointing in the same direction. Ozek paused before continuing. The simplicity of the signs are unnerving. Ozek admitted. The Chaos Lord laughed before standing up from his dark throne. The giant figure came out of the shadows. Sporting pure black armor, his presence and aura dictated the forces of chaos, for he was one not to be trifled with. Ezekiel Abaddon, the despoiler. Then the gods beckoned death to this foolish mortal. Something I will gladly accomplish. Or we could follow my pursuit and capture him. Abaddon shifted in discomfort as his face sported an annoyed look, as if he accidentally stepped on some sort of insect. I'm afraid, Sorcerer, that you would need to discuss with Karn about that. Sure enough, Karn was staring at the Sorcerer Lord from the other side of the throne with complete hatred as he held both of his arms crossed. Ozek, however, seemed to ignore the death glare as the Sorcerer merely shrugged. Very well then, I suppose it would not be wise to go against the will of your dark gods. But the choice is still there, my lord. And I appreciate it, but I've already answered summons from a giant hulking figure came out from behind the throne, surprising both Karn and Ozek. His Terminator armor dripped with disease and goo, with every crack producing varieties of plague-bearing insects. His once magnificent armor, now permanently stained with the mark of Nurgle, he wielded a scythe that promised nothing but degeneration. This man was a herald, one that both champions recognized as they stood within vicinity of the host of the Destroyer Hive. Typhus, Ozek said. He brushed a man-eating fly away in disgust. A insect flew close to Karn. The Khornate Berserker paused before his hand shot out, crushing it in anger. Greetings, comrades, Typhus said. His helmet hid his disgusting features, yet he was definitely smirking beneath his mask. Karn looked ready to explode. I thought you said the strike fleet was in Khorne's name, not shared with this weakling. The festered herald turned his head to the angry marine. Ah, Karn. It has been quite some time since we fought. Ozek turned his eyes between the two of them. At first he had thought that dealing with Karn would be difficult. Now he had to figure out a plan to deal with Typhus as well. Silence your mouth, Typhus. That hive world was promised to us. Except when we arrived, your weak plague killed all of its inhabitants. You did that on purpose. Dash. Enough. Abaddon yelled in annoyance. Karn kept silent, but his visor still promised death. Now that you have stopped arguing, I wish to inform that Typhus is here on request of Nurgle. Ozek was now curious. What does the Plague Lord want with this green, armored mortal? Typhus was now a bit surprised. You know of this mortal? Ozek chuckled. Of course, now I'm truly intrigued. Abaddon raised an eye. The four most powerful champions in existence. Minus a fifth, of course. The scale of this has never happened since the Horus Heresy. Ozek said. Abaddon lifted a head in thought before realizing the truth of what the sorcerer spoke. All of this having to do with a green, armored mortal. I have a sinking suspicion that this has to do with the complacency of the followers of Slaanesh. Lord Abaddon, a astropath turned heretic, said, our heretics have picked up what appears to be signatures of Tau ships alongside a singular Eldar warship. Ozek piped up. That must be our target. All of Tzeentch signs all point here. We're very close. Abaddon smiled, with Karn and Typhus brandishing their weaponry in excitement. Then I suppose we do not disappoint the gods. Abaddon said before he bellowed. Prepare for the slaughter, before laughing heartily. The cries and beckons of chaos reigned through the corrupted metal of the ship. It was time for battle. Kalyan Bijel. Doom walked to the glass window, his helmet snuggled in his arm, with Vega floating next to him. Show her. Vega paused. I'm afraid I require more INF dash. My wife and son. Vega paused again. This time it was way more lengthier. Very well. His screen lit up before showing an ancient picture. Doom wearing his armor as his wife and child stood next to him. His child was a baby at the time, and the kid was a toddler when he died. Flashback. Come on, give me the goddamn news. A night sentinel came out of the room, before taking off his helmet, a face with transparent skin, showing a skeleton and blood veins. These were the soldiers that fought alongside him. He's dead. There was a pause before the Doomslayer's legs gave way. His face showed no emotion, his mind wouldn't allow it, but his body would as he struggled to take it in. He dashed. Hey, you're serious? Aren't you? The soldier nodded. Doom paused before his body stiffened. Sir, if you need to dash. No, it's fine. Doom said, I'm not a goddamn pansy. I can walk myself out. The Knight Sentinel nodded in an unsure fashion as he watched his leader stand up before turning around. As soon as Doom walked out of the room, he lost it. His first target was the Stone Council, bashing it with his gauntlets as it was turned into rubble. His second target was a decorative ancient pillar. He kicked it with all of his might as it crumbled into dust. He went on, bashing anything that was in his way, anything to lessen the pain. He was about to smack into a high-tech council until he stopped, a picture of himself, his wife, and her newborn child. He balled a fist, only to release it. He said nothing as he pressed a button, the picture downloading itself into his suit. She is lost. A voice said it. Doom averted his gaze to a completely black and soulless orb that he had found within the depths of hell. The Doomslayer said nothing. Instead, he walked towards the deathly black orb. What do you know? There is still time for the little one. You must act quickly. Doom looked around before looking back. How the fuck can I trust you? Simple. Do you want your son back or not? Doom's gaze hardened. Yes, he said without a doubt. Then you must carry out a purely minor task. And that would be, place me within the altar, and the powers of hell shall see to it that you are rewarded. Doom realized the awfulness of what he was about to commit, but he nodded. His hands were about to reach out to grab it, before he heard a voice. Monke, Kalyan Bijel. He snapped out of it. The confused face of Aeroleth was at the other side of the room. However, her gaze shifted. You are not all right. Doom chuckled bitterly. Gosh, genius, who the fuck tipped you off? Who is that? Aeroleth said as she pointed at the picture of Doom with his wife and child. Vega immediately shut it off. The AI was possibly the only person or robot really that Doom trusted with that info. Nobody, and it's none of your damn business. Doom said, anger seething within his words. Aeroleth was taken a bit back as she backed away before standing still. Her face was serious. That's your wife and child, is it not? Doom mentally cursed. He forgot that Aeroleth was possibly really fucking old. So chances were that she was wise beyond her years. Yeah, you got it, congrats. Now, do you want a prize? Doom said sarcastically. Aeroleth's features softened a bit as she walked forward. What happened to them? She expected to be met with hostility, only for Doom to sigh. Dead. Her gaze dropped. I see. And she dashed. Aeroleth's eyes drifted downwards. Looks like you? Yep. There was a long, awkward silence. So there? Happy now? Big Demon Slayer has an emotional chink in his armor. Doom said, before chuckling again. Pathetic, isn't it? Araleth looked up, her eyes filled with determination. I do not believe so. Sometimes emotion can be your greatest weapon. Excuse me, Miss Araleth, Doom said in anger. But that's absolute bullshit. Emotion is exactly what caused all this. Doom said as he gestured to himself. And the worst part is, emotion didn't make me a heretic, it didn't make me jerk off with barbed wire, but it sure as hell made me a traitor. It clouded my judgment, and for that, Doom glumly looked down. It was eternal torment for me. Never being able to find peace, all it was. Doom finished, was rip and tear until the job was done. He then felt a soft hand on his cheek. It was Araleth as she looked into his eyes. I do not have much knowledge over what had transpired over your past, she said, but I believe that whatever you had done had been made up for, because you fight. You fight against the demons of chaos without fear, something very few claim they can do. And for that I believe that you are not a traitor, Doomslayer. You are the bulwark for all of us. Doom was deep within thought before he realized her point. He had redeemed himself. The souls of his Night Sentinels had honored him when he had stopped the third breach of hell. He himself had done the right thing, ending the abomination that was his son. His ventures against hell were still there, but he realized that he no longer was some rageful tool. Instead, he's someone now capable of thought. Had the Seraphim granted him this? He was unsure, but he couldn't even care. Hey, you know what? You're fucking right. Araleth smiled. I do have a choice now. And my choice is to fuck up demons, because for one, I hate demons. Doom cracked both knuckles, and two, I'm good at kicking ass. Almost on K, a warp portal opened up, dragging a slew of chaos ships, including a brand new despoiler-class battleship leading the fleet. The Eldar's eyes widened. I must rejoin my sirs, before she put her helmet back on. Doomslayer, you must dash. The Doomslayer was already holding the doorway, his shotgun held by his side as Vega floated beside him. Puffed, already ahead of you, before pumping it. The Eldar nodded before preparing her power spear. The two ran down the hallway. As Tau technicians were in the midst of chaos, various engineers were already powering up the weaponry. They had already reached the bridge to see an arguing Farser and Commander. Machu saw Doom as she averted her gaze to him. She seemed pissed. Where did you go? Doom merely shrugged. I just did some thinking. I reckon it shouldn't matter. I'm still going to kick demon ass. Now, it was the Farser's turn to be confused as she looked at Araleth. It is a long story. It does not matter. The human cults draw near. They're almost within dash. A giant portal at the side of the bay opened up before Commander Farsight could finish. A bloodletter came rushing out, its long tongue beckoning the collection of skulls. It raised its blade towards the group. A few Tau soldiers yelled in surprise as they raised their weapons. However, it would be too late. For the bloodletter, that is. The Marine rushed forward, his fist meeting directly into its cheek as its bone and skin crumpled inwards. The Coronate demon was stopped directly in its tracks as it roared in surprise. Doom merely grabbed it by the horns before kicking its kneecap in, breaking its leg as the creature struggled before forcing it to kneel. The Doomslayer began to pull on its right horn. The creature screeched something awful as its horn came loose, a fountain of tainted blood pouring from the wound. Without a word, Doom drove its own horn directly through its head. The creature struggled even more fiercely before Doom twisted said horn, bending the bloodletter's head to a complete 180 and snapping whatever bone it had in its neck. It merely whimpered before falling to the ground, its ugly face still staring up with its body turned over. Doom turned around. Everyone was stunned in silence before Doom turned around. That's not even the coolest shit I'm about to do, before looking back at the slowly closing portal. Come on, Vega! The Doomslayer yelled before jumping in, the drone following closely behind him. There was a long and length pause before Farsight spoke up. Did that Gula just... Machu, who was equally stunned, finally spoke up. Yes. Yes, he did. Chapter 15. Oh, what's this? The warp. So this is what was really like traveling the warp. Absolute chaos as varieties of colors streamed past Doom's visor, almost making him feel like he was having a bad trip. If you take a left, Doomslayer, you should reach the flagship. Vega said. The small drone was deftly avoiding the random currents as it flew next to him. Doom spotted the one singular warp tunnel that guided them straight towards the despoiler warship. Had Vega not been with him, then there was no way he would have seen it. Got it, Vega, Doom said before reaching his hand out, the metal scraping against the currents of the warp. Now, be ready to dash. The small warp tunnel zipped past as Doom lost his handling. Their only ticket out. Oh, shit, that's not good, was all Doom said. Vega was silent before the A.I spoke. It appears that you just missed the target destination. What is going dash? Kind spoke within Doom's mind as he was about to finish that sentence until he saw the situation they were in as Doom free-falled through the warp. What in my name happened? Doom could imagine himself coughing. I tried to get to the flagship. It didn't work out. Stupid Monkey. Kind yelled before Doom's hand glowed red with blood and fire. Kind temporarily wrestling control as it grabbed onto a very rickety green-colored tunnel. And then, without further ado, they were dragged as the premature forces of the Wyak took hold, taking them to a different albeit close destination. Blood Flag's void ship bridge. Git ya stupid git. Blood Flag said as he smacked the hapless snotling directly off the ship console, holding the tiny squig within his hands, delicately placing it on the ship's controls. The smaller creature began yipping everywhere, as if it had a migraine. Spookum scratched the back of his bald green head. Boss, is there something wrong with the squig? Blood Flag was about to respond before another figure burst into the room, a weird boy as he held his head in pain. Boss, there's a real big one coming. Too much noise. Too much. I think is gonna, whack. Bang. Brickfist yelled before ducking under a pile of scrap. Blood Flag's eyes widened. Spookums prayed to Gorka Mork, and Nail Brain smacked the engine, mainly because the mech boy was busy working below decks in the Daka Bay, giving him no context to react to the turn of events. Instead, the squig stopped barking, looking directly at the weird boy as he held his head before stiffening and standing up straight, the orc psyker calming down as he withdrew both hands. Spookum stood close to Blood Flag as they both stared wide-eyed at the weird boy. Boss, I think it was a false dash. The weird boy exploded, getting blood all over the place as it stained the homemade console, as well as the scrap walls of the ship. Zog, my hat. Blood Flag yelled in anger as his black hat was now stained red. That's it. From now on, WEZ, gonna make sure no weird BOYZ are allowed in air. Boss. WZ gonna have a strict regime air, and now that dash. Boss. What? Brickfist pointed at where the weird boy used to be. Standing in its place was a green armored figure. The figure looked around, confused as a Tau drone flew next to it. Oi, who the Zog are you? The squig on the console started barking like crazy, chasing its own stubby tail as it pointed its short face directly at the man. There was a lengthy pause before the figure spoke. Me? Who the fuck are you? You look like fucking Shrek. Blood Flag took out his custom shoulda. Whadia just say to me ya UMIE. Doom POV. Was that Wisemon K? You do realize you were dealing with orcs. Kind said with a hint of disgust. He relinquished his control on his hand as soon as they exited the portal and into whatever this place was. Orcs. Brutish and disgusting creatures, only caring about violence. No offense, but isn't that sort of you? Kind almost gasped in shock. You dare compare me with orcs? Vega spoke in Doom's helmet before the Slayer could respond. Doomslayer, it appears that a violent spiritual being is currently residing within your left hand. I will attempt to remove this. The drone said before a welder popped up on its crab-like claw. Vega, no, now's not the fucking time. Doom said as he was held at gunpoint by the green aliens. Hey, listen, assholes. I'm just as confused as you are. But right now, there is a huge battle that was about to happen, and I really have to dash. The ship immediately shook as the orc ship jumped out of warp travel. A huge clusterfuck of chaos ships and Tau ships, with a singular Eldar cruiser that deftly avoided the ship-to-ship fire. Blood Flag withdrew his gaze, and as did the rest of the orcs. They gave all the time Doom needed. He raised a singular fist, before turning tail and running. He literally had no time to even cave in their faces, because right now, one of the biggest battles was about to commence. The squig was the first to react, yipping before running up to him. Biting on the Marine's leg as it clung on, Doom didn't even notice. The other orcs turned their heads only to see the scrap doorway close. Oi, boss, the Yumi's getting away, Brickfist said in anger. However, Spookums realized something. Why, boss, didn't that Yumi fit the description? Blood Flag immediately slapped his forehead after realization came to him. Does it right? It's the green-armored. Yumi Gork and Mork wanted us to help. There was a pause before Blood Flag lost his patience. Well, don't just stand or you gets. After him. Why yes, boss. Spookums yelled before Brickfist filed out, leaving Blood Flag to think of what to do next. Blood Flag's void ship Daka Bay. Doomslayer. I have already calculated a way in which we can board the enemy vessel via orc ship. Say it. Doom said as he turned another scrap heap of a corridor. He passed a few orcs who were too busy to notice Doom as they whacked random gizmos with wrenches. By investigating the Tau database, I have discovered that every orc vessel has what is called a grot launcher, which is designed to fire live humanoids. Oh great, I always wanted to be shot out of a cannon. Doom said sarcastically. Perfect, then we can begin right away. Vega said before his drone form began shifting until it was a circular disc, attaching itself magnetically to Doom's back. A what? Doom asked as he saw what Vega was talking about. A couple of tiny snotlings were busy playing around with what appeared to be a giant breech loader of some sort. One of them accidentally fell inside before it closed. A giant, resounding explosion sounded as embers flicked away at the cracks. The loader opened up. The snotling was no longer there. Kind spoke up. Truly your robotic companion cannot be Dash. Oi. Doom turned around to see another orc. This time he looked like a cyborg as the orc spat out a nail from his mouth, preparing his Daka. Yuzi, not a orc. Who the Zog are you? Doom simply stood there. I'm the Doomslayer, before jumping inside the loader, bracing for launch. There was a long, awkward pause as nothing happened. Nailbrain paused before he realized something. Wait, aren't you Dat Green? Yumi Gork and Mork wanted to help. Yes, I am. Doom said in an unsure tone as he nestled himself again. He had no idea what the green alien was talking about. There was another long pause as the breech loader didn't close. Okay, now how the fuck does this dash? It closed directly on Doom's face before firing, tossing the Marine through space as Nailbrain stared with a hint of confusion before taking out his radio. A few grots gathered around, scratching their heads at what had just happened. Boss, I's got some bad news. The Yumi just used a goblaba. What? Blood Flag yelled on the other end. Space. Doom's world was already a surge of motion as he was flung at an incredible speed, passing a few grot bodies along the way before he spotted his target. The Despoiler-class battleship as it came into view from behind an asteroid. He somehow miraculously kept on course. A few chaos beams whizzed past as fighters engaged in the distance. He was coming in fast before the side of the gigantic ship met him. Holding both arms out, Doom grabbed hold of the twisted metal before tightening his grip. He lifted himself up before raising a fist and punching downwards, denting the metal a tiny bit. Damn, fucking ship is tough. Doom said before throwing another punch with not much effect. Doomslayer, I calculate it would take around 22 hours of blunt force to breach through the hull of this vessel. I will begin to calculate a better approach. You do that. While I'm sitting my ass out, he dash. Something stirred next to him. Despite there being a vacuum, something was touching his leg. I turned his head to see a tiny pinkish-looking creature with an ugly-looking pug face as its clawed legs clung onto his leg, yipping at him. What the fuck is that thing? Ugh, a disgusting squig, kill it. Kind said within his mind, only for Vega to speak up. I believe the fungal-based life form can be of some assistance, Doomslayer. Let me hear it then. He narrowly tilted his head from some space debris. The creature known as the squig is capable of applying numerous amount of G-force when biting, even capable of penetrating power armor. Their stomachs also contain a very acidic compound that can disintegrate every known object, making it liable to consume even more material. Sorry Vega, but I really don't see how this tiny-ass thing is gonna dash. The squig sniffed the hull of the Chaos ship before it opened its mouth, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. It bit down, taking a gigantic portion of the metal before ravenously biting, consuming the metal at an incredible rate. Holy fuck, I take that back, Doom said before grabbing a piece of the torn-off metal, prying away the edges as the creature went to work, creating a small-sized tunnel as it chewed its way through. Doom began to pry the edges before bending the metal completely, his upper body strength going to work as the metal slowly morphed to fit his size. He crawled 1 meter forward before the air rushed around him. The squig had done it. It had gotten him inside. Aegis of fear. The fungal creature's body flung backwards before Doom grabbed it, bringing it with him as he jumped inside the currently venting room as air was rapidly drained from it. Thinking fast, he spotted a small metal and black chaos altar, and without hesitation, broke it off the pedestal as a stream of black and corrupt energy faceted out before smashing it on the newly made hole in the hull. It proved to be an effective, airtight sealant. Doom merely patted his hands together before turning around. The small squig was now on the floor as it sniffed around before looking up at him. There was a long pause. Vega, is something supposed to dash? The squig merely yapped at the Doomslayer before its stubby legs carried it off, going under a blood-soaked vent as it left Doom by himself. Okay, an unfortunate turn of events, Vega commented. Regardless, if you were to dash. There was a pause. Doom had immediately noticed it. Vega? You okay there, buddy? Error code 37. Please recharge this unit at the nearest station. Thank you. An automated message came from inside Doom's helmet before he felt the drone on his back power down. It appears that the machine has ran out of power. Typical. Kind said. Doom immediately shook with anger. Shut the fuck up, Kane. Nobody cares about what you think. The Doomslayer said. Now he was beginning to grow pissed. And where the fuck is the map to this place? They sure as hell don't have it on the goddamn Eleva Dash. Doom was about to finish that sentence before the metal and barbed door behind him slid open as the harsh metal scraped against the interior. Immediately, the sounds of heavy weapons being lifted was heard. Doom slowly turned around to see a whole hallway full of a different enemy this time, wearing power armor like Kaldor. It's just that this time, everything just felt wrong about them wearing it as they held an unholy feeling to them. Doom could take one look at them before realizing he was no longer dealing with demons, but something else entirely. How the hell did they know he was here? There was a chuckle as the whole hallway line slowly made way before an unhelmeted Chaos Marine came forward. His pale and mutated face, now filled with sharp teeth and a mismatched jawline, were particularly hideous to look at. So, this is the mortal? The green, armored mortal that our gods wish for his painful death. Is that not right, my brothers? The Chaos Champion said. There was a series of thundering shouts promising death and despair. Doom looked them up and down. Sorry, but who the fuck are you people? The Chaos Champion tilted his head for a second. Us? US. We are the warriors of chaos, destined to serve the dark gods and serve a PLA dash. Doom sputtered, almost laughing. What is so laughable, mortal? The Chaos Champion said as he drew his Chaos Bolt and sword, both with a spiky and unholy aesthetic. Sorry, but holy shit. You actually believe in that ascension bullshit? Doom chuckled as he struggled to contain his giggles. God, even back at UAC, at least they worshipped hell to power a fucking light bulb. You guys literally have no other excuse. The champion raised an eye. The rest of his warband, hardened former Space Marines that had submitted to the promise of dark power, also looked unsure of what to do. Normally their opponent wouldn't be so upbeat. Doom sighed before he made the first move. So what the fuck are we waiting for? Are we going to fight? He was immediately answered by a super-powered black metal fist directly in the chest, sending him flying across the hallway and into the corrupted steel of the ship. The corrupted metal bent around Doom's body. Immediately, the entire warband, including the champion, burst out into raucous laughter as the halls literally shook with the resonating noises. Doom effortlessly stood up from the wreckage. The laughing stopped. Doom paused. His stature was deathly still. Next time, give me a ready up, will ya? Doom said in a seething tone. He rushed forward, his boots caving the metal around him like liquid as his steps carried absolute rage. The champion got over his surprise before yelling out a battle cry and challenge. However, the champion did not see the Marine's fist before it collided directly into the champion's black armored stomach. The mere force of the punch bent the metal around the Chaos Marine's flesh into a twisted amalgamation of flesh. The champion's ugly face immediately spat out a glob of corrupted blood before Doom spun, using the rotation of his still embedded fist to launch the champion's body directly into the side of the corridor, smashing the Chaos Marine's body against the wall. The power armor literally became one with the rest of his body as his flesh shifted from the sheer amount of force. It was then that Doom finally extracted his bloodied gauntlet, turning around to the rest of the warband. They had their bolters out already before they opened fire. Well, that was a welcome change. Normally demons would hesitate as soon as the biggest of them were killed. Doom had to immediately react, pulling the champion's corpse off the wall as any flesh that was attached to the wall was torn off. Within an instant, his new bullet shield took the brunt of the first volley before the Space Marines had to reload, the metal corpse being torn apart by the explosive firepower of the Chaos Marines, making it now useless. But that was all the time Doom needed before he unveiled what he had been setting up. The Predator armor had been specially designed with the ability to open pocket dimensions, these pocket dimensions containing any weapons he might have found on his journey. He had decided the best weapon in this situation would have to be his favorite, the chain gun. He rose from the destroyed corpse before turning around, bringing the tri-barreled weapon to bear. He smiled within his helmet before clicking a button, accessing his second favorite mode, Sentry Mode. Within an instant, he opened fire, the three barrels spinning rapidly as they spat out 15mm tungsten slugs at a 220,000-pound force per square inch. The payload tore directly through the hallway, annihilating the metal door with a few Chaos Marines along with it. The rest that were too slow were practically torn apart as the sheer volume of slugs breached their armor, bounced around inside, making a flesh cocktail, before exiting out and bouncing around the hallway in a beautiful shower of sparks. Doom held his finger on the trigger as the chain gun began to rapidly heat up, the barrels turning yellow, before he finally relinquished his finger. There was a long silence before he was rewarded with more bolter fire. Apparently, the survivors had used the corpses of their corrupted comrades as bullet shields. Copycats. Doom put away the chain gun, just in time to feel the first bolter round hit him in the chest. It was a surprise, Those explosive kinetic shell he could imagine could pose quite a big problem if he got shot with them. He could even see the rounds possibly denting his helm-made armor. However, it was no time to mess around. The shells would have easily torn him apart if he wasn't wearing the Predator armor, and he sure as hell didn't feel comfy at getting shot now. Pulling out his own fiery bolt pistol as it materialized in his hand, he shot one of the rounds directly into the head of a Chaos Marine that had been firing, the warrior's helmet searing off along with his flesh as the chunks burned as soon as it hit the ground. This only seemed to anger the rest of the warriors as the surviving ones yelled for the Doomslayer's death before they all began to open fire. "Shit!" Doom yelled before dashing forward, jumping behind a few bodies before the entire hallway behind him was torn apart. So that's why the hull of the ship was so thick. Immediately, the warriors began focusing fire to keep Doom suppressed behind the small pile of power-armored corpses, their fire tearing their dead comrades apart. Doom's cover was not going to last long. Luckily, he already had an idea, something which was designed to work with his Predator suit. He steadied his breath before concentrating, felt energy beginning to billow within his right hand before it formed into a red, solid, unnatural-looking ball. Doom didn't even look before tossing it over, soaring through the air as the siphon grenade left a trail of dangerous-looking lights in its wake. Immediately, the Chaos Marines yelled out in warning before a few began to retreat from cover. However, they could not predict that the hellish grenade was impact-based. The results were instantaneous as the hallway glowed with crimson red. A bubble of chaotic and uncontrollable energy formed with all the warriors caught inside of it. The Chaos Marines began to hack and cough as hellish ruins appear below them, their own essence of chaotic energy being robbed from them before being infused for power by the Predator suit. Most of the Chaos Warriors attempted to tear away their own helmets in an attempt to gasp for air, an ironically mortal need, before puking and collapsing to the ground in pain. To have their own essence taken was like a human having his own marrow extracted. Doom lowered his fiery bolt pistol, toying around with it in his hands before humming a tune, walking and tipping over the corpses of Chaos Marines that had littered the black metal corridor. The few remaining that happened to be alive were still stumbling on the ground as they no longer even had the ability to stand up. Doom merely walked past them before spotting a desecrated-looking elevator at the end of the hallway. He was about to walk forward until he felt a gauntlet grabbed him by the leg. He looked down to see a weakened Chaos Marine, coughing violently behind his helmet as hellish ruins began to weigh him down even further, a side effect of the siphon grenade. You took our gifts." The black armored Marine violently coughed. "You dash." Doom smiled before his hand shot out, grabbing the Chaos Marine by the neckplate with ease before bringing him close. The dent in the Doomslayer's armor began to repair itself little by little as the Chaos essence was transmutated into something more useful. "I probably said this before," Doom said as his free hand balled into a fist, but I'm the Doomslayer. Bitch. Before bringing his fist forward, slamming his gauntlet into the Chaos Marine's face before imploding his unfortunate head as Doom's mask was splashed with a new set of blood. He dropped the headless corpse before spying the rest of the warband, with the majority now dead or dying. "As for the rest of you, I'm not even going to bother," Doom said before turning around. "You're all fucking dead regardless." He left the siphoned Chaos Warriors behind as they attempted to sputter curses and insults. Doom merely got in the elevator before slamming down the mechanical lever, sending a whole set of abused machinery to work before the doors closed behind him, bringing him further into the aegis of fear. Alionaretha's gift lower deck. Joan would admit that the sounds of battle outside of the ship's hull actually calmed her down. It was at least something familiar in a case of being surrounded with so much things that were alien, so to speak. She had given up on attempting to escape for now. Every time she would almost reach the edge, she would only be pulled back by gravity. Eldar imprisonment was fickle, but at the same time effective, giving you a sliver of escape only to pull it away from you, borderline sadistic. But importantly, she did have time to think about who exactly was that man, the one that had willingly conspired with the Xenos. Another shake as the Eldar ship tilted, the metal groaning as it glazed a hit. Joan groaned with disappointment. Was this really how she would die? Being blown up alongside a Eldar ship? She had gone through so much fights, so much pain, and this is how she would be remembered. She lowered her head glumly as her helmet's edges touched her armor. Fate worked in strange ways, but she didn't notice the flickering embers that began to develop at the doorway. Joan tilted her helmet upwards before her eyes widened. A hand began to take form before an arm, and then a torso of some sort of power armor. It wasn't long before a full form began to take shape. His armor was patterned to be that of a skeleton, with a rib cage and bones within the grooves of the armor. The warrior was helmetless, showing off his completely pale skin and deathly thin face. When his body fully formed from the flames, he stood still, holding a flame-patterned chainsword in his left and a skull with piercing, glowing eyes in his right. He looked directly at her, or more specifically her soul, and she could already feel the hate of daemonkind radiate off of him. "I am Atticus Centurius, member of the Legion of the Damned," the cursed space marine said, before pointing his chainsword at her. "And it would do you well to listen. Adepta Sororita." Joan could only think of one sentence. Why did these things happen to her? Aegis of Fear elevator. Needless to say, Doom had been on all assortments of elevators. He had been on fast elevators, gravity elevators, purpley gravity elevators. But by far, this elevator took the cake of being the absolute worst, as it was slow as hell. Literally, as most of the machinery looked like it had been to hell. Doom sighed before slowly sitting down, placing both arms on his knees in relaxation. He was probably going to have to wait a bit. In the meanwhile, he had a great idea. That idea being to bug Kine again. "Kane." Doom said. There was no response. "Kine." There was another pause before Doom droned again. "Kine dash." Silence. The god of murder yelled in absolute fury as Doom's left hand began to drip blood. "My name is Keela Minsha Kine. Refer it as Dash." Yeah, whatever. "Want to hear a joke?" Doom said. There was a pause before the god spoke. "Hey, joke? What is that?" "You know, a joke. Something funny." "Ugh, I despise that word." "Funny," Kine said. "Just like what that weakling god Segarak uses for entertainment." "Oh, come on. Jokes are fun. In fact, I have a good one right now. I'll tell it to you." Doom said. "Never. I do not wish to hear this." "Joke," Kine said as he attempted to speak the unfamiliar word. "Too bad," Doom said before chuckling to himself. "Okay, what's the difference between a demon and an onion?" There was a pause, a lengthy pause, before curiosity got the better of the god. "Speak." "All right, here it comes," Doom said before continuing. "No one cries when you chop up the demon." There was a stifle, a tiny but genuine stifle coming from the god. It was then Doom realized he had made the Eldar god of murder and war almost giggle. Doom almost had to hold back his laugh as he began to hear Kine sputter like a broken stereo after the god realized his folly. "What is this? What have you done to me?" Then Doom began to laugh. "Answer me," Kine yelled in fury. "That was a laugh, dumbass. You thought my joke was funny." "Lies. It's all Dash." Doom began to notice movement around the elevator. Kine immediately paused as well. His eyes adjusted before something struck, the Marine acting instantly as his hand shot out, grabbing the attacker. It appeared to be a small insect of some sort, sporting a swollen and maggot-filled body filled with pus and other horrors, sporting a venom-tipped blade and stinger. Doom sneered before tightening his grip slightly, the bug's upper body expanding before exploding into green, sickly sludge as it got all over the place. Writhing maggots left over began digging into the hull. "Ugiha. Fucking disgusting," Doom said, wiping his gauntlet on his armor. "What the fuck was that?" Kine didn't respond. Instead, the elevator abruptly stopped. Doom didn't even have the time to react before a giant gauntlet smashed through the elevator door. It was corroded and stained green, with piece of it missing as it dripped dirty fluid. It grabbed Doom by the neck before pulling the Doomslayer and forcefully throwing him out. Doom simply stabilized himself midair before planting both feet on the ground, skidding across the disgusting fleshy ground. He barely recovered before Doom deftly avoided a bladed weapon, its trail leaving marks of filth within the air itself. Doom retaliated quickly with a punch directly into the green power armored stomach of whoever was attacking him. There was a grunt before the sound of a minor skid. The Marine looked up before getting a better view of his singular opponent. The hulking warrior's power armor was green, but better looking at it, Doom realized it was that color because of the amount of filth that adorned it. Its helmet was bulky, and a long, protruding, fleshy spike grew out of it, almost like a rhino. His right shoulder plate held a skinned human face, whilst his other held more of the flesh growths. However, the most disgusting feature was the amount of grimy holes that were embedded within the warrior. Insects, like the one before, seemed to thrive within them, eating and consuming the bacteria that seemed to grow at an impossible rate. The warrior said as he inspected the newly made dent within his armor. Sick blood gently poured out of it. The Nurgle Marine held his hand above it before the dent became covered with green filth, regenerating it at a very quick pace. This was going to be a problem, a big problem. The hulking monstrosity stood up as he looked down upon the Doomslayer. "You would have made a fine addition to the family. Mortal, alas, Father Nurgle wishes your death." Typhus, the Herald of Nurgle, said before preparing his literally sick scythe. Thank God Doom had lost his sense of smell a long time ago. Chapter 16, Aegis of Fear Engines. "Look upon me," and Dash, the Herald coughed before he spoke. This time he no longer had a slow pause. "Know that no one shall save you, mortal," Typhus said before raising his scythe, Filth began to grow around the floor around him as green bacteria began to form colonies. Definitely not a pleasant sight. Okay, Kane, who the fuck is this guy? And why does he look like the illegitimate child of a turd and a rotten piece of steak? That turd is Typhus, the Scourge of Worlds, host of the Destroyer High Dash. Wait, Typhus? Isn't that a fucking skin rash? Focused Doom Slayer. Doom concentrated, but not before noticing that Kine for once didn't call him a monkey and instead a more respectable title. Kinda surprising. Typhus chuckled before lifting both arms. Die in agony. The herald yelled before the Destroyer Hive came to action. The insects swarming out of every crevice and crack of his armor as they flew at unnatural speeds towards Doom. To say Doom was surrounded was an understatement. Instead, he was swarmed like a bug that fell in an ant nest. The Destroyer Hive was upon the Doomslayer, stinging and scratching his armor. Doom couldn't even see through his visor as one of the insects had its disgusting body pressed against it. The bugs attempted to find a chink in his armor. Doom attempted to swat, crushing about 2 of the insects. But that was only a bare noticeable amount, as about 1,000 still remained. Kine, little help here, asshole. Doom yelled. Automatically, his left hand began to heat up before spouting fire. The insects sped away from it, like wolves from a torch as a few slower ones were immediately burned to a crisp, their corruption purged. Typhus paused, his scythe and gauntlet shaking with something uncontrollable. Kayani, I should have known it would be you, the herald said, his stature brimming with anger. You killed Ulker, one of Nurgle's children. He was beautiful. Doom looked at Typhus before looking at his left hand, staring at Kine for reference. Ugh, he's referring to that time in Typhon Primaris. Killing that great, unclean one brought me much joy, Kine said. The Doomslayer looked back up at his arm before staring at Typhus. He paused before he decided to rant. Shut the fuck up. No one cares about your fucking family, you oversized piece of shit. Typhus yelled in anger before banging his scythe against the ground. Automatically, the plague colonies on the ground began acting up before they began to disturbingly form into shapes. And then they began to grow. It took 2 seconds before a few figures fully formed. Molted green humanoid creatures, just as corrupted and degenerate as their master, with a single eye to guide them. They raised their decaying weapons as they screeched out, guts out on display. Doom had to say, these guys could give a Mancubus a run for their money on how fucked they looked. The first one rushed towards him, rusty blade raised in the air as it screamed on the offensive. Doom took out his shotgun, blasting its shoulder straight off. The demon screeched as it slowly attempted to regenerate, only for Doom to press his shotgun against its heart, blasting another hole as the creature turned into sludge. The other 2 rushed forward, seemingly angered by the loss of their younger brother. Doom didn't really give a shit as he caught the arm of the first one, kicking his leg forward before effortlessly ripping off the appendage. The creature grunted in surprise before Doom shot his hand forward, grabbing onto its singular eyeball before pulling. The ocular organ came loose, dragging a bunch of filthy nerves along with it as the plague bearer screeched in agony. The last one attempted to assist his brethren, but Doom quickly reacted, throwing the eye directly into the face of the other green demon. The eyeball exploded into green slime as it covered the plague bearer's face with it. The creature momentarily stopped as it rubbed at its face, all the time Doom needed. The chainsaw was out as Doom plunged the blade of the industrial weapon into the demon's groin. It stumbled before Doom revved it up. The plague bearer screamed out as the Doomslayer began to bring it upwards, trailing its guts and putrid blood on the floor of the ship. Doom let out a hearty laugh before pulling the blade upwards in one swift stroke, fully splitting the creature into 2 as it paused, before both separate pieces fell apart. However, in the throes of this, Doom didn't expect the attack from Typhus. The Herald had used the 2 demon as a distraction before raising his scythe cut. And for the first time in a long time, Doom felt pain. Aegis of Fearbridge. Ozek Armin looked upon the battle with great interest. So much he was learning from watching the fight within the bowels of the ship. Apparently this Doomslayer had the mark of Kine, handy to know of course. He would have watched even more before a booming voice interrupted his far sight. Sorcerer, Abaddon said. The sorcerer turned around with a hint of annoyance. Yes, my lord. I require you to cull the weak from the Tau ships. They're starting to become an annoyance I can no longer ignore. Ozek nodded. It shall be done. Before waving his hand, immediately he blended the warp to his favor. And before you leave, where's Karn? Abaddon asked. Ozek concentrated before he saw it. Fresh Tau blood being spilt as their skulls were collected. I believe he has happened to board one of the Tau ships with his warband. He might return soon. Abaddon chuckled. Then everything shall go to plan, it seems. I gain favor from Nurgle as Typhus claims his reward with Karn distracted. The sorcerer nodded, but in reality beneath his helmet he stared on with thought and malice. Not only was that fool Typhus getting to claim the prize for his god, but he was being sent to do a slave's errand. Perhaps he would give his so-called Kalyan Bijel a visit first. Aegis of Fear Engines. Doom looked at his new wound with wonder. Typhus's scythe had managed to breach the Praetor armor before cutting a deep gash into his arm. Strange, almost. Wow, I didn't expect that. Doom said. Typhus laughed. Do you feel that? The plague running through you? Soon you shall die painfully. And slowly, the herald said. Doom paused before clutching his stomach. Ugh, yeah. Before slumping over. It feels like, before standing up normally again, like you're bullshit. Typhus immediately retained a stance of confusion. You should be dead. This blade was dipped within Nurgle's brew of filth. Typhus said. Yeah, but hey, check this out. Doom said before he produced a vial of blue energy from his pouch. Without hesitation, he plunged it into his wound, shattering it. Then his gauntlet began to regenerate, forming itself back together before it looked good as new. All right, good to go. Typhus responded as he slammed his scythe in an attempt to cleave Doom in half. Very well. I shall just have to end you as the gods intended. Typhus yelled as he twirled his scythe before slashing horizontally. Doom deftly dodged before bringing out the super shotgun, the familiar double-barreled saw action once more as he blasted. However, Typhus jumped from the shot, a surprising feat given the herald's size. The uranium-coated pellets cut through the hull as the walls collapsed, revealing the engine room as the hellish machinery went to work. Doom whistled. You're a bigger pain in the ass than I imagined. He casually reloaded the double-barreled. Not only that, but you almost fucked up my arm, you goddamn piece of shit. Your minuscule quirks only serve to quicken your demise. Typhus yelled. This time it seemed the herald was growing annoyed. The rotting warrior raised his scythe. I shall end this. For Nurgle's rotten glory. Then Typhus swung downwards, the blade cutting the air as mold began to eat at the oxygen. Doom held out his hand before the scythe had cut directly through his gauntlet, the blade going through the other side as Doom's very own blood smacked his helmet. Typhus laughed only to pause as he noticed something. It was the Doomslayer's left hand. Suddenly a cacophony of eldritch fire from kind burst out, engulfing the scythe as the flames climbed, reaching the gauntlets of Typhus's power armor. The herald relinquished his grip for just a second. It was all the second Doom needed as his right hand shot out, grasping the staff of the scythe before pulling. The force was so powerful that the weapon was tore away from the herald's grasp. The herald's fingers even bent at an unnatural angle from the quickness of it. And then in one swift motion, Doom steadied the scythe out in his own hand before twisting himself into a 360, bringing the back end of the blade directly into Typhus's helmet. The sound was reminiscent of a tank being with a shell before Typhus went flying, his helmet falling off in the process as he landed in the hole made by the super shotgun. A few bits of machinery was broken as his giant form landed. Doom took the scythe before bringing it down to his knee and breaking it. It sounded like flesh being torn apart as Doom dropped the broken scythe on the floor, walking forward in the process. Typhus slammed his fist against the ground before his body propelled himself up, the herald of Nurgle facing off against his opponent as he growled in anger, unfortunately giving Doom a full sight of his face. Whoa, holy shit, Doom yelled in genuine shock. Is that your face or your ass? Doom said as he pointed. Sure enough, the herald sported a look that only Father Nurgle and his brethren could love, with rotting teeth and skin that looked bloated in pus and green warts. Cease. You're talking, Typhus yelled before raising his gauntlet. A stream of green chemfire billowed out into Doom's direction as the Argent Marine raised his hand to cover his mask. The rotten flames burned at his armor, but otherwise unharmed him. Why won't you just die? Typhus yelled in anger before charging forward, slamming into Doom as the herald brought both hands down upon him. The Doomslayer blocked the colossal hit as he bulked, the metal floor even bending from the impact. You first, asshole, Doom yelled before bringing his fist and grabbing, tearing a hole in the side of Typhus as the herald roared in pain. Doom took the opportunity to kick the herald in the chest as Typhus went flying again. This time, Doom walked forward as he cracked both knuckles, the herald struggling to get up as his body was busy regenerating. Doom was about to take out a weapon before he noticed something. The herald was smiling. Then Doom saw it. A distinct distortion in the air as filth began to build up before actual coherent figures began to form. This time bigger than the plague bearers, it wasn't even a second before filthy green bolter fire shot through the fog, striking Doom as the Marine grunted. The plague Marines had arrived. A dozen of them cackled in glee as they opened fired. Doom had to cover his mask as he was struck time after time, the explosive rounds doing a number on his armor. He needed to get to cover, and fast. More plague bearers were even starting to appear as they rose out of the filthy ground. He pressed his foot against the floor before pushing off, bending the steel below as Doom went sailing through the air. Bolter fire zoomed past his form as he landed behind the metallic pillars of the Aegis, the bolter fire crashing through. Doom was about to retaliate before he felt something pull at his arm. The walls were growing flesh now as the Nurgle-infested warp energies produced by Typhus began to go into maximum effect. A mouth of rotted teeth was clamped on Doom's arm as rotted eyes peered at him. The cover had grown a face of pure malignant growth and intent. Doom grunted in annoyance before slapping it. The flesh was literally obliterated as the face screeched out, returning back into the original pillar before the Plague Marines opened fire again, tearing the pillar apart. It was only coincidental that his suit had cued the song, Rip and Tear. Damn it, Doom simply said. His armor was coated with filth as bacteria began to grow. His form was getting considerably slowed. Fucking pain in the asses. Doom yelled in anger. What shall you do now? Kine asked. You could choose to let me reign over. I can obliterate all of them. Doom thought about that for a second before a singular idea came to his head. I have a better idea. He hesitantly reached into his pouch before he produced something. A red sphere with glowing orange energy. A visage of a flaming skull existed within it. What is that? Kine said in curiosity. I didn't want to have to do this, but these assholes really aren't giving me a choice, which is completely fine by me. And then Doom smiled a bit to happily before crushing it. His pupils dilated before nothing but hatred and rage reigned within them. His conscience immediately escaping him as his mind becomes something. Immediately the fleshy ground around Doom retreated around him. The festering warp clouds dissipated as the Plague Marines looked around in confusion. They could never know what was about to hit them. Doom was now in berserk state. Chaos helped them all. Tau Cruiser. Karn ripped the head off the last Tau soldier. He had admired his handiwork as he threw the corpse with the rest of the bodies. His rage would be suffice for now. He turned to the rest of his war band as they busily began collecting the skulls of their latest victory. He stomped forward on the bloody ground, intending on moving forward before he felt it. Rage. A lot of old rage. And it was all coming from the Aegis of fear. He had known his war band had sensed it as well. The various bloodletters that had randomly joined in during the fight immediately stopped as they sniffed the air in confusion. They immediately screeched before attempting to follow it, their mouths salivating with blood and saliva as the smell of rage became enticing. What is it? Karn asked in menacing fashion to no one in particular. Something was hardwired within them. Something old yet instinctual as they felt the rage emanate. They wished to fight whatever had been emanating it. Master, it appears the bloodletters have become excitable, a cornate berserker stated. However, Karn didn't listen, as the betrayer came to realization. It is him, Karn simply said before turning to the rest of his war band. We go back to the Aegis. Now, Aegis of fear engines. There was a long, eerie silence as the Plague Marines stood on guard, their bolters and rusted sabers out as they noticed the infested fog slowly dissipate. Typhus growled as he pushed past a few plague bearers that seemed hesitant, his body still busy regenerating. The herald glared at the pillar as he attempted to channel the powers of Nurgle only to find out his connection had been cut off. What is the meaning of this? The remains of the pillar had been smashed aside. Typhus turned his head as well as the rest of his warband. Doom stood there, perfectly still as he slowly stepped over the wreckage. Immediately the Plague Marines opened fire. Doom simply took it, his arms shaking as he flexed his fingers. The visage of pure rage on the Marine's face, the surface of his mask now tinted with red. He immediately rushed forward, way too fast for the eye to even catch up before he outstretched his arm to the closest Plague Marine. Look-o dash. The bloated warrior couldn't even finish his warning before his body was missing. Doom had landed a furious haymaker directly into the midsection of the warrior's body, his putrid blood and guts flying everywhere as his remains were scattered across the walls. His rusty power armor scrapped into pieces by Doom's fists. One plague bearer attempted to cleave Doom as he stood menacingly over the green bloody pile. The Doomslayer merely outstretched his arm before reaching it forward, breaking straight through the skin and out the back. It screeched before the Slayer pulled, grabbing its spine as it tore free from the demon's body. Doom merely grunted before using the bone like a weapon, smashing the creature's spine onto its body as it splattered into green pus. A few Plague Marines had attempted to fire again, their rounds blowing into Doom as his armor took hit after hit, the explosives within them creating small clouds of orange and green. He simply ignored it. Jumping high into the air, he crashed down on top of another warrior. Despite Doom's smaller size, his rage was paramount as a single stomp caved the warrior within himself, creating a god-awful screeching noise of groaning metal. He turned before ferociously backhanded the Plague Marine to his left as the Chaos Marine tried to defend himself. His head, as well as a portion of his upper body, was smacked right off as his armor and flesh went flying. The last Plague Marine cursed as he had attempted to fire at point blank, only for Doom to grab the barrel of his bolter before wrestling out of the warrior's hands. The Plague Marine attempted counterattack as the warrior swung his gauntlet, but to no avail, Doom simply smashed the butt of the gun into the Marine's mask. The Plague Marine's helmet came right off before Doom bought the rifle back, smashing the Marine's putrid face in as the force knocked the brain matter out the back of his skull. The warrior stumbled as he attempted to yell out before Doom grabbed the Marine's meaty head with his gauntlet, slowly closing it into a fist as he crushed the entirety of the warrior's head. He turned to the rest of the Marines, crushing the rusty bolter like a tin can as he slowly walked to the remaining forces of Nurgle. They raised their weapons. Doom simply laughed, this time manically as he laughed and laughed. There was nothing charming or hilarious about it, just sinister as he kicked the Plague Marine's corpse away. The Plague Bearers began feeling it as they began back away. They could physically feel the anger radiating from Doom, almost like a detergent, as they rapidly began shifting back into the nearby fester before retreating entirely. Typhus looked on with surprise and disdain before looking at the enraged Doomslayer. "Kill him. Just kill him," Typhus yelled as he attempted to channel the help of Nurgle. That wouldn't work, sadly. Not even the powers of God could stand against a raging current of pure hatred. The last 5 of the Plague Marines open-fired. Doom simply charged forward, taking into fire as he outstretched both arms as grabbed the first Plague Marine into a bear hug. The Marine yelled out in surprise before Doom squeezed, crushing the warrior's body as the pressure made his head pop off like a bottle cap. Doom wordlessly grabbed onto the corpse's legs before swinging in a wide arc, slamming the headless body into its comrades as the force broke the 2 Plague Marines into neat chunks of green meat and blood. One of the last 2 Plague Marines yelled a fearsome cry before donning his festering battle axe. Doom let go of the corpse before the Plague Marine brought it down. The axe embedded itself into Doom's shoulder as a bit of blood spurted. The Slayer looked at it, the now stuck-in axe, before looking back at the Marine. The warrior couldn't even sputter in surprise before Doom wrenched the axe out and cleaved it downwards with a titanic amount of force. It cut the Plague Marine in a perfect 2 as his vital organs poured out the middle like a waterfall. The last Marine attempted to open fire, only for Doom to throw the axe as it went sailing directly into the Marine's forehead. A giant amount of blood gushed out before the Marine paused, inspecting the new head ornament before kneeling and falling to the ground. A pool of blood was now on the ground as various corpses now surrounded the Marine. Now it was only Typhus as the Herald seemed outright angry now. "So, perhaps you have acquired some blessing, possibly from Kine. It does not matter," Typhus said darkly, "because as long as I live, as long as I draw breath, the fog of festering began to appear again as Typhus successfully channeled the warp, slowly walking forward before outstretching his hand. "You shall never dash." Doom grabbed the Herald's power gauntlet. "Escape," Typhus said with a bit of confusion before Doom pulled with all his might, dragging the Herald over and smacking him against the metal. It was almost comical to see a smaller figure throw a fully power-armored demigod over his shoulder as Doom showed no mercy. And then he did again, this time on the other side, as the metal became equally dented. And again, before it became a blur. Typhus's limbs went flying as his body was torn to pieces from the sheer physical trauma. Metal was breaking right off as bolts began shooting outwards. With one mighty pull, Doom slammed Typhus into the hull for the last time as the floor shattered into a crater. The rest of his limbs were finally off, leaving only the arm Doom grasped onto. Typhus now looked even worse than he did before. The Doomslayer merely grunted before dropping the Herald's remains. He inspected the bloodbath around him as he admired his handiwork before craning his neck. His rage was now wearing off as coherent thought flooded back into his mind, looking on at nothing before a voice spoke. "You can't win." He turned to see the Herald, now immobile as he blankly stared at the metal ceiling. Typhus turned, his face now cut and bruised to the point that it was literally unrecognizable. His destroyer swarm was now leaving the crushed hives of his body, almost like rats from a sinking ship as they slowly disintegrated. Many had tried to go against the might of the Chaos Gods. "You will fall, just as countless others have." Typhus wheezed out before chuckling darkly. "And when that occurs, I will be there to witness it all." Doom sighed, stretching his arms as he bent his hands before walking to Typhus. The fallen Herald looked up as Doom brought his foot upwards. "Cool story, bro," and then sent it downwards. The power exerted from the leg sent through the Herald's chest made Typhus implode all over the ground as sticky pus and bloody mucus was sent across the floor. Typhus was no more, now just a pile of dirty waste as it slowly began to dissipate away. Doom raised his foot back up before looking at his boot. He gasped in shock and surprise. Ugeha. Kane, I think I stepped in shit. He immediately retched as he attempted to scrape his foot against the floor. You just defeated the scourge of a million worlds. And the only thing you're concerned of is if you stepped on excrement. Kine spoke in a slow manner as he attempted to process this information. Yeah. Did you see how fucking nasty that guy was? I could literally make a ton of jokes about his dash. No more jokes. Kine yelled. Doom shrugged, stepping away from the bodies of inertial forces. He was about to turn before he heard Vega reactivate on his back. Testing. 1-2, th dash. Vega, you're back, Doom said. I thought you ran out of power or some bullshit like that. Vega sprung off Doom as the AI went into drone mode. I apologize. I did not predict the effect of warp taint upon my software. Oh damn. Well, are you okay now? Doom asked. The machine paused. Fortunately, while I was shut off, I had managed to torrent a few files from the Adeptus Mechanicus in order to counteract the warp taint. I should be working at dash. Vega paused again before his programming went haywire, switching to a green light on the Tau drone's visor. I am a child of the Omnisia. Cultist of the machine go dash. Vega immediately regained his control as Doom watched stupefied. The drone paused again before reverting back to its previous state. Maximum efficiency. You should probably download a goddamn exorcist while you're at it, Doom said before he looked at his own armor. It was caked with all sorts of nasty things, ranging from pus and putrid guts. And I need a cleaner, a good one. Suddenly, he burst into flames as Kine's fury swept over him before quickly residing, burning away the bacteria and fester, but leaving the Marine unharmed. Doom looked around in surprise before looking at his hand. Wow, thanks, Kane. You actually did something nice and productive for a change, Doom said as he began walking towards the exit of the room. Do not take my service for granted, Doomslayer. Kine said. Yeah, whatever. Let's get the fuck out of dash. Doom noticed his foot nudge against something as he looked down to see an unconscious form on the harsh metal floor, wearing a familiar Sororita's power armor. Her helmet and bolter laid to the side. What the foo, Joan? Doom said as he knelt down. How the hell did she end up here? Doom asked. Kine didn't answer, and Vega's tiny pincer arms merely shrugged. Doom immediately held her up before shaking violently in an attempt to wake her up. Joan, you okay? The nun didn't respond as the Marine almost felt worry creep up. Maybe he would need to slap her, which might actually kill her if he wasn't carefully. However, it didn't have to come to that, as he felt movement below him. The warrior nun's eyes fluttered open as she stared at the visor of Doom. IWHE dash. And then she swung her head to the left and threw up her stomach's contents, prompting the Doomslayer to stand back up in a hurry. He paused before stating a single sentence. Yeah, you look fine. Chapter 17, Bloody Fun Time. Kalyan Bijel, 5 minutes ago. Hold the line, warriors, Commander Farsight yelled out. Let not a single one of these creatures pass. Fire now pervaded throughout the Tau ships as breakage in the smooth metal hulls seemed to be prevalent due to the inclusion of bolter fire. The Firecast had formed a sturdy line in the loading bay of the ship. It seemed that was where most of the portals seemed to be originating from. The portals flared for a moment before a new stream of demons and horrors came through. The Tau opened fire again, catching the chaos spawn in a flurry of blue plasma as the creatures were melted. However, the sheer amount of them were staggering, a few chaos spawn reaching the front line as they broke through, easily cleaving any unlucky Tau soldier in their way. Farsight cursed as he beckoned his mech to move, brandishing his sword in the process before boosting forward. His blade sliced through the metal pile of corrupted flesh as it cut the first one in half, the creature writhing in agony before his men finished it off. The last spawn was already poised to attack the commander as Ferrist's mech raised its sword in defense, only for the creature to disintegrate after being struck by a blue bolt of warp energy as Machu entered the fray. Her eyes glowed an eerie blue as she floated downwards. Farsight merely grunted as he turned his mech back to the onslaught. It is fortunate that you showed up. Apologies, I had to ensure the safety of my own before attending to yours. Machu replied. Whilst most would consider a phrase in a situation such as this to be selfish or rude, Farsight could empathize with her. A leader would always look at for his or her own regardless. Accepted, Farsight said before he pointed at the portals. Can you dash? A giant blast of warp energy immediately blew outward, stumbling everyone as the portals dissipated. Farsight turned his head to Machu with annoyance as the farcer looked back at him. Her face, however, was strewn with alert. That wasn't me. He turned his mech back before he spotted the culprit. A menacing figure stood where the portals once were, clad in an unnaturally blue power armor, wearing a dark visored helmet that was adorned with horns, sporting a freakish staff. 2 Rubrici flanked the sorcerer, the soulless husks raising their weapons. An eerie glow began to grow around the sorcerer. Machu's eyes widened in realization before she yelled out, "Get back!" The Tau warriors in the front didn't head the order in time as a giant wave of corrupted fire swept through them. Machi put her own hand out before a barrier formed around the few around her. The result of the psychic attack had a terrible consequence as the soldiers were charred to ash, the unlucky ones momentarily surviving as they screamed out in agony from the slow melting. Both rubriques opened fired, their bolters decimating the screaming survivors. The Farseer narrowed her eyes. "Farsight, get the rest of your surviving men out of here." "What of yourself, then?" the commander asked. "You shall require the support. Nothing will help against this." The Tau commander's face turned grim before he gave the order, his soldiers forced to withdraw from losses as they went deeper into the ship. Ozek walked forward in an uncaring fashion, the corpses of the damned paving his way as he looked upon the Farseer. "It is a shame that the Tau aren't as connected to the warp as much as you and I, Farseer. I would have truly taught their upstart race their place." Ozek simply shook his head, which begs the question, what is a lone Eldar cruiser doing amongst a fleet of lowly Xenos? Matcha didn't answer, instead staring venomously at him. "Ah, forgive me. Where are my manners?" The sorcerer bent his head forward in mock respect. "I am Dash. You do not need to tell me your name, Ozek Armin. Your wicked ways already tell it yourself." Ozek paused before he chuckled darkly. "Farseer Matcha, as wise as ever I see." "As expected," Matcha said as her eyes glowed blue. Ozek merely crossed his arms. "Really? You challenge me, Farseer?" The Eldar responded by blasting eldritch electricity directly at Ozek. It struck the two rubric marines as they disintegrated, their souls not allowed release as they levitated close to Ozek. The Chaos Sorcerer merely sighed as he blew his hand forward, the warp power parting from him as if he were a prophet crossing the Red Sea. She stopped the surge as she gripped her spear tightly. The Chaos Sorcerer then spoke. "How I envied your kind when I was a follower of the Corpse Emperor. For you, the mastery of the warp was something simply given to you during the beginning of your existence." Ozek walked forward. "I, however, was shaped by it, molded by it. My brothers suffered horrible mutations at its hand whilst I survived. And now, I will show you the true power of the Thousand Suns." Machi raised her spear. "And now you're merely a plaything to the very god that doomed you, Monkey." "I am not. The Chaos Gods are merely a means to an end." Ozek replied in anger. He paused before he chuckled. "Why don't you use that so-called battle fate that you Farseers rely on? You must have realized how pointless this fight is, when all it will do is end up with you dead." Machu simply shook her head. The sorcerer gritted his teeth behind his mask, raising his hand to commence an attack. He was about to blast upon the worst of the worst from the warp until something stopped him, a very strange feeling of fate. The Farseer tilted her head as she held her spear cautiously. Ozek then relinquished his staff. "Consider yourself fortunate, Macho. Something more important just garnered my attention," Ozek said before he raised his staff. A portal appeared as he stepped through it, however not before turning his head one last time. "But do not fret. I made sure to leave a token of my gratitude." He then disappeared, leaving no trace of himself. The Eldar pondered at his words for a second before she noticed a sliver of distorted space that was left behind. Her eyes widened as her hands instinctively shot out, a barrier of order appearing in front of her before a torrent of warp cascaded around her, bending and twirling the metal of the deck, as the immaterial did as it pleased. It finally stopped as the Farseer gritted her teeth and breathed heavily from the effort. She was alive, yet the same couldn't be said for her surroundings as it looked utterly destroyed and twisted. She sensed the captain attempt to message her as she put a hand to her ear. "Yes, Captain. Farseer, a void ship has appeared. It has orc markings." The Eldar's eyes widened. "Blood Flag's void ship." The orc captain leaned forward on his seat elegantly, inspecting the conflict with a keen interest before leaning back and stating his unique foresight on the evolving situation in typical orc fashion. "What a zog is going on? Spiky boys, fishy gits, and pansies fighting without US." He then pointed his meaty finger towards Spookums, who was in the process of playing Throw the Grot with Brickfist. "Spookums, I want to hear the boys sing." The cabin orc saluted. "On it, boss," before throwing the Gretchen into a nearby scrap pile, running up to a few orc boys that were hanging around a few barrels. "Boss says that Wheezy gonna sing." That seemed to rile up the crew, the orcs now grabbing nearby barrels and shudahs as makeshift instruments before the bashing their weapons against any soundable part. 15 orcs on a deaf men's hulk, looking down to barrel the gun, grunting to each other through big, sharp teeth, saying this one will give us some fun. The booming grew in intensity, Blood Flag steering the hulking ship as the immobile chaos ship came into view. 13 orcs with the captain's chest, hoping to quench their greedy first, grunting to each other true big, sharp teeth, saying I was the one that saw it first. Blood Flag's meaty green hand smashed the big red button, the ship speeding up as it shook violently, red lighting indicating that the ship was going at orc speed. A few Tau fighters were smashed along the way, barely deterring the speeding Space Hulk. One lone orc left to steal the loot, wishing it didn't turn out so, grunting to himself true big, sharp teeth, saying I shoulda let the pilot dash. Go! The ship hit its mark, a disabled Chaos cruiser as it exploded into a dying star. Blood Flag's ship breaking through to the other side. Why? Aegis of fear, present time. To say it was awkward was an understatement. It was super awkward. After helping the Sister of Battle to her feet, Joan had automatically gone into defense mode now that she had magically got shit out from nowhere. So there was no talking at all. In fact, she had been outright ignoring him in the past minute or so after entering the slow-ass elevator. She hadn't even questioned the Tau droid, which was a big surprise as Vega lazily floated next to Doom. That made him decide that she must have really been on edge to not go batshit crazy from seeing something that was heretical. A long elevator ride with no elevator music whilst being stuck in an awkward situation was not on the Marine's bucket list. Doom tilted his helmet as he pretended to inspect the interior before whistling his favorite metal tune. Joan tilted her head. The red eyes of her helmet showed no emotion. There was another long pause as the Doom Slayer coughed. Listen, is there something wrong? Doom asked. Joan didn't respond. Do you have a sore throat? No response again. Is it that time of the month for you? Joan paused before she slowly turned her head. What? Doom sighed in relief. Oh, great. And here, I thought you were possessed. The Marine stretched his hands before turning his helmet to hers. So anyways, I wanted to ask, what's the deal with your hair? Doom asked, was it always white like that? Or did you get dyed? Like that little tattoo beneath your eye? I mean, it's religious and edgy, but still, it's probably not a birthmark. The Marine said as he ran it on. Joan balled her knuckles, her power suit trembling with a sudden rage before she spun her fist, denting the metal on the side of the elevator. There was a long pause as Doom and Vega watched her, unsure of what to exactly say. Why are you like this? Joan yelled out. We stand at the command ship of chaos, the heart of this madness, and all you do is joke. Joan said in anger before pointing at his AI companion. And to add insult, you host an abominable intelligence within a Xenos machine, our presence. Hey, leave Vega out of T-dash. However, the Marine's eyes spotted something on Joan's hip, a small pouch with the symbol of a Templar's helmet, a mark of a Knight Sentinel. His hand immediately shot out, grabbing hold of the satchel and tearing it straight off the battle nun's belt, much to her dismay. What are you, Dash? He didn't respond as he opened the satchel. A slew of ageless and religious relics spilled to the floor with a crack, some even predating hell itself as the priceless artifacts thudded against the ground. Doom got on his knees, wiping his gauntlet across the metal floor, even breaking a few trinkets as they crinkled before his hand stopped. Joan got over her shock before even curiosity overtook her. She stared down. What is it? The Doomslayer held it up for her to see. It appeared to be a small doll of some sort, wearing a tiny multicolored set of plastipredor armor as it played a small retro theme. What is that? An ancient weapon? Kine asked as within Doom's head, breaking his conscious silence. Vega unknowingly was about to answer. It appears to be a Dash. A new fucking collectible. Fuck yeah. Doom yelled in exhilaration. I don't even think I've gotten this one yet. Must have been hidden in the depths of Argent Nur for a really long time. Doom said as he held it in front of his mask. Check it. It's even got movable arms. That is what I'm fucking talking about. Joan stared at him. A fully grown man in high-tech green power armor that could tear an SLYTH's jaw open, playing with a doll as he sat on the ground. This had to be the work of the warp. By the way, Dash, Doom looked up at her. Who gave you the Knight Sentinel satchel? She paused as she looked at him, before she slowly spoke. It was them, the ones that you asked about. The Legion of the Damned? Doom asked. Joe nodded. He looked at the action figure before looking back at her. Oh, well now I know why they sent you. You do? Joan asked in curiosity. Yeah, how else could I have gotten a new addition to my collection? Doom said gleefully as the doll disappeared, now inducted in the Predator armor. It says that this one represents Seraphim. Interesting. Maybe they're trying to tell me something. Joan was about to ask what he meant only for the elevator to stop. Chill, the Marine said as he pressed his helmet next to the elevator door. They had appeared to have reached their destination. The Sister of Battle shut her mouth behind her helmet as she stared at him. There was a long moment of silence before Doom reached his arm back, balling his gauntlet into a fist before punching straight through the door. The surprised hiss of a creature was heard before the Doomslayer pulled back. A bloodletter was in his grasp, much to Joan's surprise as she immediately backed away from the flailing demon. Doom wrestled its control as he wrapped his arms around the creature's legs before turning it sideways. It roared out in fury as the Marine lifted the creature over his head, and then he brought it down on his knee. A giant, awful crack was heard, as Doom broke the demon's spine with a sickening ease before it went limp, attempting to move, but to no avail. The Marine simply grabbed it by the neck before slamming it against the hole in the wall, tossing the creature into the endless shaft as its screams were heard before slowly dying out. Doom turned to Joan as she held her gun, shaking, unsure of what she had just witnessed. The Marine turned his head to her before shrugging, unceremoniously. Joan felt the need to now speak. "What are you?" Doom merely sighed as he walked up to the elevator door. He turned his head to her. "You want to know a secret, Joan?" She didn't know how to respond, instead opting to stare at him. "Demons only understand two languages," Doom said as he slowly forced the door open. "That being brutality and cruelty," Doom said before he heaved, slamming the doors open to reveal a hallway full of bloodletters, all of them roaring before charging forward. Joan immediately raised her gun before Doom put a hand over it. The Sister of Battle turned her head only to see Doom stare at the hallway. "I'm just a guy who's fluent at both," Doom said before he cracked his knuckles. His suit chose a song as it began to play. The demons were merely moments away. The smooth cacophony of an electric bass was heard. Doom's eyes widened in realization. Ultra-violence. This should be good. He cheered in glee before priming a frag grenade and charged forward, ducking under the blade of the first bloodletter as he grabbed the demon by the waist and hoisting it over his shoulder, using the creature as a makeshift battering ram against its comrades as he slammed into the rest of them. He immediately plunged the frag grenade into the abdomen of the hoisted demon as the creature roared out in pain before he kicked it into its comrades. There was a pause before the hallway exploded, sending blood-ridden limbs and guts everywhere. Doom was once again covered head to toe in demon guts as blood dripped from hands. There was a pause as the music blared on before Doom stood straight to inspect his handiwork. He turned his head to Joan. "You coming by the way?" A gurgle was heard as a surviving demon attempted to claw itself out of the pile. Its limb, except for a singular arm and leg, had been blown off. Doom whistled before he stomped forward, his leggings crushing the remains of the bloodletters underneath them as he grabbed it by the throat. "Damn, I missed one," Doom said as he checked it out. He turned his head, this time with impatience. "Are you coming or no dash?" Yes, I am," Joan said in frustration as she attempted to draw her gaze from the slaughter. She was used to seeing bodies and blood, but to see this much violence performed by an actual human being was almost sickening. "By the Emperor, you are insane." "No, I'm not." "Well, maybe slightly." The Doomslayer pondered for a second. Joan's helmet tilted as her red visor stared back at Doom's mask. "You must have had some form of unholy assistance. That is the only explanation for this. Blah, blah, blah," Doom said as he waved his hand and the bloodletter around like a puppet. "What if I'm just really good at this kind of stuff? Admit it, you've never seen anyone do what I do, and it terrifies you." She hesitated before she loaded her weapon. "That doesn't matter. The proper way to fight the hordes of demonkind is through the Emperor's lie dash. Emperor this, Emperor that. Who the fuck is this guy?" Doom asked. He turned his head to the wounded bloodletter as he gestured to it. "The Emperor didn't kill these assholes, ID dash." Suddenly, metal blast doors at the end of the hall slowly opened as a new figure stomped in. A Chaos Marine in full red armor seemed to vigorously look around before he turned his helmet to the Doomslayer. There was a pause as the two stared at each other before the Berserker pointed, whirring up his chain's word in the process. "Found you," the Berserker bellowed before he charged forward, yelling a fearsome cry. Doom frowned before he pulled back his arm and tossed the bloodletter directly at the cornate Berserker. The demon traveled straight through the hallway as the Berserker furiously smashed the creature aside, blowing a fresh paint job of blood across the wall. Doom paused as he got an in-depth analysis before coming up with a conclusion. "Damn, this guy's not fucking around." And then the Berserker slammed into him, already too close for Joan to get a clear shot as the two of them went at it. The Red Marine roared out, attempting to raise his chain word before Doom slapped it away, the blade clattering uselessly on the ground. The Berserker growled as he pulled back a gauntlet and brought it forward only for Doom to block it as the Green Marine launched a furious uppercut, catching the cornate Berserker right in the helmet as the Berserker was thrown upwards, the Red Marine's body smashing into the ceiling as a fountain of blood began to drip down, his body shaking as if it refused to die before finally stopping. Doom tapped the corpse to see if it was still alive before shrugging, turning his head to Joan. "Who the fuck was that?" Doom asked. "A Berserker," Joan whispered as she stared at the hanging corpse in shock. "Oh, okay," the Doomslayer said before walking past the body, pulling out his heavy rifle in the process. "By the way, put that big fucking gun you have to use. We got company." Sure enough, 4 more figures approached from the blast door, The group of them sporting normal Chaos power armor, they held normal bolter guns. The first Chaos Marine yelled something before taking out a bolter, firing it off at the duo. Joan and Doom fired back. However, even the Green Marine came to learn that the FMJ rounds were not very useful against the power armor of the Chaos Marines as they bounced off. He kept firing before a bolt round struck the Doomslayer in the shoulder as it detonated, jerking him sideways as it shredded his pauldron. "Fuck," Doom yelled as he put a hand to it. Now that his rage had worn off, it had seemingly made him more susceptible than usual to damage. His shredded armor now reflecting that as it slowly regenerated thanks to the Argent energy he had stored. However, pain only served to anger him, and anger served to determine him even further. Joan fired off a few more rounds, nailing a Chaos Marine that had been trying to get through the doorway as his chest exploded from the bolter round. She turned her head as she ducked behind cover. "Cover my ass," Doom said as he bought out his rocket launcher before he began to step out of cover. "By the Emperor, what are you doing?" Joan yelled out. Doom paid her no heed as his free hand grabbed the leg of the hanging berserker, wrenching the body from the ceiling before throwing it. The corpse of a headless power-armored berserker zipped straight through the hallway as the air gave way. The Chaos Marines that stood in the way narrowly dodged before turning their weapons back to the target, only to see a cluster of rockets heading straight towards each of them as the end of the hallway blew up into a magnificent orange. Freshly splattered body parts flew through the air as they imploded, leaving charred pieces of power armor in their wake. The Doomslayer paused before he let out a whoop. "Fucking A." He then began to rigorously strum his rocket launcher as if it were a guitar. Joan silently stared at the destruction, her head now contemplating in thought as she looked at the cheering Marine. What'd she gotten herself into? Aegis of Fear Worship Bay. Karn snarled in anger as he reached the upper deck, his warband following behind him. His pure rage alone could be felt by even his warriors, as the ones closest kept a good distance away from him. He felt close to the source, so close. Yet most of the time, they had only found the remnants of battle, most of it left being bloody chunks of Chaos Marines or bloodletters. Yet none of the invading party, which made Karn assume that whoever was attacking was either incredibly skilled or simply alone. It had to be him, the green armored mortal. Even more to add fuel to the fire of rage that began to bubble inside him. This opponent may actually be worthy of a skull on his armor. He grunted, his warband nodding as they separated, going down another corridor in order to look for him. Korn turned his head, follow the bloodletters, and make sure to release that pathetic hell brute. He rounded the next corner before he bumped into a familiar Chaos Sorcerer. "Ozek," Karn growled as he looked at the Sorcerer. "What are you doing here?" He merely yawned. "The same reason as you dash." Karn immediately revved up Gorehowl. "I know what you plan, Sorcerer, and I tell you again that the skull of this one shall be mine." Ozek merely stared coldly, his visor pulsing with energy. There was a long, dangerous pause before the Sorcerer relented. "I suppose you know of what transpired. Does it matter?" Karn said darkly as he stopped his chain axe. "Every moment me and my warband are separated from the slaughter, the more impatient Korn grows, and the more impatient I grow. Typhus is dead." Karn paused before he tilted his head, so, before he walked off, preparing for battle. Ozek stood there before he sighed in annoyance. "Cornates. Quick tempers, slow minds." He simply said before slowly sinking into the shadows. He would need to be patient to win this battle. Aegis of Fear Worship entrance. The two of them came across another entrance. This time the doors heavily decorated with heretical relics and artifacts, and Joan regarded the large door with disgust. "The amount of heresy I'm witnessing is sickening." "I know, right?" Doom said as he stretched his arms. "Well, come on. Let's go inside, shall we?" "Go inside there?" Joan asked as she shook her head. Who knows what sort of heretical depravity we might encounter? Why is she hesitating? After all, the Emperor is with her. Kine said darkly before chuckling. Doom simply looked at his hand before scowling. "Shut the fuck up, Kane. Nobody likes a snarky piece of shit." "What?" Joan asked as she turned her head to him. "What?" Doom replied. Joan paused as she gave up. "Regardless, I believe we should attempt to find another way. Emperor knows what could be awaiting behind that set of doors." Doom pondered for a second before turning his head to his robotic companion. "What do you think, Vega?" The AI was currently paused as he looked at the door. "My sensors are picking up movement behind these doors. Perhaps there is merit to Joan's concerns." "Really? That doesn't sound so dash." The doors wrestled open as something pushed its hand through. A giant dreadnought-like arm, seemingly made out of demon flesh and metal, grabbed Doom by the waist. A long pause ensued. "Oh, for fuck's sake, not again," Doom said before he was ripped violently from his spot, disappearing behind the door. Joan's eyes widened as she attempted to run up only for the doors to close. "Strange. Did I make a miscalculation?" Vega asked. The Sister of Battle turned her helmet to the drone as she stared in disbelief. Containment. Doom's world was spinning as whatever had him began to flail him around like a rag doll. He gritted his teeth in anger as his hands reached down into the fleshy bits of the Hellbrut's arm before smashing into the pulpy stuff. It roared out, raising Doom in the air before throwing him into the ground as he created a giant dent before rolling into the middle of the large room. He stood up to look at his opponent as Doom scowled. "You're gonna pay for doing that, fuckface." The Hellbrute merely roared in response as it raised its twin-linked autocannon before firing, its exposed face twisting with insanity. The Doomslayer ran to the side, just barely avoiding it as the massive rounds destroyed the floor he had been standing on, forcing him to take cover behind a pillar before watching it get torn apart. His Gauss cannon materialized in his hands as he waited for his opponent to overheat before getting out of cover, charging up a shot before firing. It struck the corrupted dreadnought directly in the shoulder as it screeched out, its cannon arm falling off its body as its exposed face sneered out before charging forward with its remaining arm. Doom ran toward it, narrowly dodging as its sharp metal hand as it attempted to cleave him before grabbing onto its arm. It roared out in surprise as Doom grunted, turning sideways as he threw the gigantic dreadnought to the side, its armor scraping against metal as it came to a stop, struggling to get up. He wasted no time, jumping on top of the behemoth as he grabbed onto its little chest piece. The exposed face hissing at him as it stared at him in pure hatred, it attempted to grab at him only for Doom to slam its giant metal arm away, knocking the limbs straight off as it disconnected. He then pried open its metal chest like a can of beans. The controller eyes widened as it finally understood what was happening. And then Doom grabbed it by the neck, pulling it out as the thing screeched out in agony. The tubes that connected it to its frame disconnecting as it dragged pieces of its flesh. Doom grabbed its legs as well, before holding it sideways and pulling. It screamed as its midsection came apart, its organs and blood falling to the floor as Doom threw its halves down, hard, smashing it into even more gore. The way he killed the user kind of reminded him of the time when he had dealt with the Hellguards. The nostalgia bringing a smile to his face as the doors on the other side opened, a whole warband of berserkers and bloodletters arriving. "Get up, Hellbrute. Slaughter is about to dash." The berserker looked at Doom, standing on top of the dead frame. There was a pause before the cornate berserker yelled, "There he is," before they all revved up or prepared any weapon they had at their disposal. "Oh, fuck off," Doom said as he simply reached for the giant autocannon that the Hellbrute had left behind. Immediately, all the berserkers at the end of the room paused, as did the demons, as they watched him lift the impossibly heavy weapon over his shoulder. "And tell your god I sent you." And then he fired, the autocannon booming as it sent artillery-sized rounds at the end of the hallway. The gigantic bolt rounds cleaving through their ranks as blood and body parts were flung all over the place. He slowly began to walk forward, firing the cannon as he yelled out in anger. Moments of demon slaughter like this made him truly feel alive. The cannon clicked as it ran out ammo, Doom snorting as he tossed it away. A few survivors revealed themselves, some demon, some berserker. But it wouldn't matter, because for Doom they would soon be the same, dead. A few cornate berserkers rose out, now clearly angered and riled up as they let out a fearsome cry that shook the walls, their axes and swords brandished as they charged forward. Blood for the blood god and skulls for his throne. The first one swung his axe down, Doom grabbing the handle before it reached him as he swiped his leg underneath the berserker. The warrior was forcefully suspended in air for a split second, allowing Doom to slam his fist down into the man's chest as his power armor broke like a shell, bursting into gore. Two bloodletters ran up next in Doom's proverbial chopping block. The demons raised their swords as they attempted to double-team him only for it to have the opposite effect. Doom simply slapped their blades as they swung down, breaking the warp-forged metal as their orange eyes widened. He grabbed the first one's horn, tearing it off as the demon screeched out before he grabbed its neck and sliced its throat open. It gurgled out before slumping over dead. The other one attempted to slash at him as Doom used the same horn and swung it to the side, eviscerating a hole in its stomach as a line of guts came pouring out before Doom took out his shotgun and pressed it against the face of the demon, pulling the trigger as a wave of blood washed over the floor. The rest of the cornate berserkers were not even fazed by the show of brutality. Instead, they seemed more excited now as they roared out in glee, the rest of them charging forward. Doom simply responded with his hatred as a berserker, using a surprising set of speed, dragged a sword by the side of Doom's chest, the blade having enough power behind it to even embed itself in the Predator armor. The two looked up at each other as Doom grabbed the warrior by the head and lifted him, slowly dragging him to the side before slamming his entire body into the ground, killing the berserker instantly as he became one with the floor. The Doomslayer grabbed hold of the sword, wrenching out of himself as he grunted. He spotted another berserker was running at him. Doom simply threw the sword with as much force as a cannon, slicing the berserker from the midsection as the warrior's separate halves fell to the floor. The Chaos Warrior still crawling towards him in a mad craze before Doom thrusted his hand forward, Kine's fiery sword penetrating the warrior's armor as it cauterized his insides. He didn't have time to inspect his handiwork before a blast of a plasma pistol caught him in the upper body, knocking him back a bit from the blue explosion. Doom grunted in annoyance before bringing out his own bolt pistol, catching the berserker in the shoulder as the warrior flinched, a new hole developing in the warrior's armor. He took advantage of his stumble as he grabbed the warrior by the legging, his gauntlet breaching through his flesh as the berserker yelled out in pain before falling to the floor. And then, like many times before, he twisted it as he broke every bone in it before smashing the leg into the warrior's helmet, killing him with his own foot. However, his back was turned for a split second as Doom felt an axe dig into his shoulder. He gritted his teeth, turning his head to the attacker, his face now angered as he grabbed the berserker's arm and in one swift stroke tore it off. The warrior roared out in pain before Doom smacked him across the helmet with said arm. A loud crack and a spurt of blood coming out of the warrior's respirator to show that his neck had been broken from the sheer force as the berserker fell backwards. Doom turned around with the arm in his hand and roared out in a crazed fashion, only to realize he was the only one left alive. "Ah, damn," Doom said as he dropped the limb. "I hope nobody saw that." "I did. It was displeasing to watch." "Oh, shut the fuck up, Kodash." The giant doors at the far side immediately opened up, a new Khornate berserker entering the room. Doom turned his head as he grunted, "Great, who the fuck is Dash?" He was responded with a power-armored fist to his face, the glass that had endured hell itself literally cracking from the sheer force of the warrior's punch. Doom went flying as he smashed into two pillars before skidding off the third one and onto the ground. He looked up from his lying position as he let out a pained chuckle. God damn, now that was a punch. The attacker stepped over the gory floor as he walked toward Doom, brandishing a gigantic chain axe that was decorated with skulls as the warrior's exposed beefy hand held it tightly. Two tufts of blue plumage descended off his helmet's decorative structure. He wordlessly grabbed Doom by the collar of his armor before smashing him into the pillar. Doom responded by bringing his two legs back before kicking downward. Whilst it would have killed any normal Chaos Marine, the man simply flinched back a tiny bit and growled, releasing Doom as he fell to the floor. The warrior didn't even give a second before kicking him, smashing him through the column and out the other side. The Doomslayer groaned before he chuckled lightly, slowly rising up as he looked at his opponent. "It is Karn. It will be wise to prepare yourself, Doomslayer." Kine spoke as the Marine tilted his head. The champion took the moment to speak up as he held onto the chain axe. "I see. That pretender kind resides in your arm, mortal," the hulking warrior said as he pointed. "I wonder what shall happen if I were to tear him away from you. Would you weaken? Would you die?" Doom narrowed his eyes as he stood up. "Listen here, fucker. Kane is just some piece of shit who tried to take over my body. I don't rely on him for anything. Besides, who the hell are you?" The Chaos Warrior merely stared at him before speaking. "I go by many names, but there is one that I am fond of." He tightened his grip on the axe. "I am Karn, the betrayer, champion of Khorne." There was a pause before Doom giggled. Karn shook with rage as his axe revved up. "What is so funny, mortal?" "And nothing. It's just that when you say champion of Khorne, it sounds like champion of Khorne." And then he began to laugh. "What are you? A fucking serial masco dash." Karn swung his axe, the air breaking from the speed and power behind the swing as it grazed the edge of Doom's armor. The Marine grunted in surprise, flinching back as blood began to seep through the chest wound. "Silence. Your words are displeasing upon the ears of myself and my God." Karn yelled in fury as his axe revved up again. Doom put a hand on the pillar before he straightened himself out, ignoring the wounds on his body as he slouched. "I'm surprised. You don't really seem to care about the fact that I slaughtered all your friends. That hardly matters. The death of my warband axe is proof that your skull is worth taking." Karn sneered as he looked down at him. "Now stand up and fight." Doom sighed. "Suit yourself." He then reached his hand out, his chainsaw materializing in his hands as he revved it. The industrial blade whirring to life as fumes came out the exhaust. "So, we're gonna throw down, or what?" Karn readied his axe. "Yes, mortal." And then the two charged at each other, both revving their weapons as they collided. Sparks flew in a torrent of rain as the two champions had their helmets pressed up against each other, both of them gritting their teeth. A powerful force set in as the metal ground began to bend around their leggings. They briefly separated before bringing their chain weapons against each other, ushering a storm of sparks as their weapons collided in brief moments of contact. Karn slashed his weapon downwards, slicing a line in Doom's shoulder as the chains dug out his flesh. Doom simply responded by using his free hand to slam an uppercut into Karn's helmet, the champion's head flinching back before slowly turning back down. The attack had cleaved off the intricate helmet as he looked down, his red eyes and bald, scarred face now visible as they were filled with rage. There was a pause as Doom spoke, impressed the hit didn't knock the warrior's head off. Holy sure dash. And then Karn pushed him back, swinging his chain axe in an effort to decapitate Doom. The Marine narrowly dodged before Karn punched him right in the face, the impact curving the air between the two of them as Doom went flying again. The glass of his Predator helmet now cracked as he landed. No mortal has ever struck me like that, Karn said as he felt his jaw with his free hand. Karn was right. Your skull is worth taking. Doom simply chuckled, taking off his helmet and spitting out a tooth and a wad of blood before putting it back on. You're going to have to try harder than that. Just like that sissy some of you call the god. Karn paused as he tilted his head. Are you speaking of Slaanesh? Yeah, he died like a little bitch. Yeah, that must have been pleasing to see, Karn replied as he smiled to himself, his scarred features twisting. Sure was. There was a pause as the two of them looked up at each other. A bizarre understanding being exchanged before Doom put his chainsaw to the side and raised his fists. All right, enough fucking around, let's go. Karn glared at him, steadying his grip on Gorechild as he began walking forward, taking menacing steps. The two reared their hand back, balling it into a fist before punching forward, their arms meeting each other as the sound reminiscent of thunder cracking was heard. The air crushing upon itself in the impact zone as buffeting winds filled the giant room. The champion brought his foot back in an attempt to kick him again, only for Doom to narrowly dodge it and throw a vicious right hook, his fist catching Karn right in the cheek as the berserker's face jerked to the side, spitting out a wad of blood as he cracked his head back, his teeth gritted. Doom used the opportunity to jump and launch a colossal kick with both of his leggings. The impact bent Karn's armor before he was launched to the other side of the room as the champion left a crater in the wall. The Doomslayer rushed up to him in an attempt to capitalize on the displacement, only for Karn to grab hold of the Marine's chest, doing a 180 turn and smashing Doom through the wall as the Marine rolled across the floor. A few heretics that were at work immediately swiveled their heads to the disturbance. Doom simply got up from the ground, grabbing the closest one as the heretical mechanic beeped in surprise before Doom tossed the machine man directly at Karn. The champion snarled as he smashed away the corrupted tech priest, only to see Doom using the distraction to rush him, the Marine grabbing hold of his power-armored waist before lifting him. Karn struggled as he felt himself fall backward as the Marine performed a German suplex, smashing the champion against the ground and causing them to fall through. They both landed as they fell against the metal, Doom and Karn already back up as they both roared, their fighting now increasing by tenfold as it became an all-out brawl between the two of them, their fists colliding against each other as they were pushed back from each other. For the first time in a long time, the two of them felt actual exhilaration, the thrill and rush of a true opponent as Doom smiled like a madman. Karn, on the other hand, kept his teeth gritted as his eyes narrowed before he raised Gorechild, slamming it on the metal as the ground shot up, throwing the Marine through the air. Doom grunted in surprise before Karn threw a right hook directly into his chest. Needless to say, the impact was immense. Doom skidded across the ground, his armor caved in from the punch as blood leaked out. Karn walked forward, cracking his fists as he slowly brought out his chain axe. It was a good effort, but now you die, Karn yelled. He raised Gorechild above his head. The Doomslayer looked up, his eyes now made of pure fury as they appeared to be on fire, a menacing red color being produced on the surface of his helmet. Karn brought the axe down, intent on beheading his enemy. Doom grabbed the handle. What? Karn yelled out. He attempted to bring it down, the axe whirring even faster. Doom simply yelled out in anger before tearing his chain axe from his grip, ruining Karn's exposed arm as the various metals were wrenched across his skin. He then took the chain axe before bringing it down to his knee, breaking the shaft half as he held the two separate pieces apart. Karn's features turned to that of disbelief. Impossible. Gorechild's shaft is made of pure adamantium. The Doomslayer turned his head. Gorechild can kiss my ass. I've been going easy on you this entire time. And then he threw the pieces on the ground. The champion paused before he shook, his rage now barely containing itself. By Karn, I will make you pay. He then charged forward, bringing his fist back. I will make you pay. Karn charged forward, roaring out as the walls shook from the battle cry. He was inches away before Doom simply stood still, rearing his hand back before punching forward. The champion's eyes widened before he felt a megaton blow land directly through his chest, going through his armor as the material broke. The impact forced Karn to grasp at his chest as blood began to leak out of it. Doom gave him no time to recover as he brought his foot to the side and kicked sideways, a resounding crack as he broke the champion's leg. The berserker grunted as Doom quickly ran forward, his hand outstretched as he grabbed onto something before pulling. A few bloodied nails fell to the ground as the tubes on the back of Karn's head disconnected. The champion roared out, his gauntlet clawing at the back of his head before Doom punched him in the shoulder, knocking him across the floor. The giant room was silent as Doom looked at his opponent, Karn slowly stirring as he pressed a gauntlet on the floor, rising despite his fatal injuries. The Doomslayer pointed, his voice now full of menace and hatred, his soaked armor slowly dripping with the blood of the damned. "Don't get up." There was a long pause before Karn grunted, his teeth gritted. "You removed my nails. You removed Angren's gift." Doom simply looked at the strange implant before crushing it, Karn slamming his fist down as he fully rose to position. A font of blood leaking from the back of his head as his eyes turned red with a maddened rage, charging forward again. Doom raised his fist in preparation as he glowered at Karn with his calm hatred. And then the air distorted as the champion disappeared. Nearby planet. D. Karn yelled out, his rage boiling over as he punched down, decimating the landscape as the ground twisted. Karn blinked, noticing it was normal ground he had destroyed and not the marine that had been in front of him just seconds ago. He turned his head before his eyes widened, a warp portal slowly closing before disappearing completely. The sky was dark on this planet, yet that did not matter. He knew who was responsible for his displacement. The champion of Khorne looked to the sky, roaring a single name, the trees shaking as leaves fell. Ozek. The champion paused, fuming with rage. However, without the nails, it had quickly subsided, a distant weariness overtaking him as Karn put a hand on his forehead. He did not see the dark Eldar Shardnet fall upon him. Aegis of fear. Doom simply looked at the closing portal as he tilted his head before he was enclosed all around, reality shifting around him as he became quickly trapped, the sensation reminding him too much of the sarcophagus he had been bound to as he attempted to move. Kyne's voice resonated again. "Doomslayer, you must free yourself." The marine stirred before grunting. He no longer wasn't in a joking mood due to the fight. His eyes scanned around as he spotted the perpetrator, a figure in sorcerer's power armor as he walked out of the shadow, his hand outstretched as it billowed the powers of the warp. Ozek Armin seemed amused. That was too easy. Doom slowly walked forward, shattering the air around him through pure grit and determination. He got barely a feet in front of Ozek before the sorcerer casted it again, now using both hands to channel the warp prison as Doom was forced to a standstill. The sorcerer gritted his teeth behind his mask. "Amazing. Somehow you resist my power." Doom merely grunted, unable to speak as the warp tightened around him. Ozek paused before he chuckled. Now, don't fret. I believe we have an appointment with Siege, and I shall get my own answers as Dash." "That will not be necessary, Armin." A dark voice spoke out. A power-armored foot stepped out of the shadows, revealing Abaddon as the Chaos Lord stood imposing. The sorcerer turned his head, a sneer behind his helmet as he pointed his staff. "Oh, come to take my discovery away, Abaddon? You are too late. This mortal is mine to study." Abaddon stood still before sighing, looking to the side. "Ugh, perhaps my deceit worked too well." And then the champion began to change, his cadaveric tie-patterned Terminator armor turning into gray, formless flesh as his bones twisted. The sight was incredibly surreal, as both Doom and Ozek watched with surprise. Finally, it stopped. Abaddon was now a strange being that sat cross-legged within the air, mutated flesh twisting and turning as its hollowed teeth stood outside its fleshy mouth. It spoke, yet the words did not come from it. Instead, the noises came from around. "Perhaps now you shall recognize me. Servant." Ozek seemed to pause. "Cinch, and I am not your servant. I demand to know why you are here." The god seemed amused. Doom stared at Cinch, pure hatred radiating from behind his visor as the changer of ways analyzed him like an object to be studied, learned from even. There was a long pause before the god seemingly figured it out. "So it is true. He has returned." Cinch spat. Ozek tilted his helmet. "Who? You know of this mortal?" Cinch paused before snapping his fleshy fingernails. Doom immediately found the ability to speak again. So he said the first thing that came naturally. "When I get out of here, I'm going to fucking kill you." The god of change did not seem amused. Instead, he simply held out his hand before a scroll materialized. A menacing red symbol appearing on the parchment as the marine's eyes widened behind his helmet. A warning created by the demons of old, or more specifically, the mark of the Doomslayer. "Now tell me, do you recognize this?" Doom paused, his tone serious. "Consider me surprised, demon. You did your research." Cinch paused before he held his hand, levitating Doom higher. "Then you are a threat that must be quickly contained. I demand info, Cinch." The sentence coming from Ozek, as the Lord of Change turned his head. What exactly is this threat? This mortal was easily dashed. Do not underestimate this. Abomination. Tsench spoke. I have read the warnings. He has brought demonkind to its knees once, and I plan on preventing that from ever happening again. But first, dash. The Lord of Change held a palm out before Doom felt his left hand burn. Kind, what the hell's going on? He's separating us. The god of war's tone shifted to that of pain. I dash. Cannot. Hold. And then the burning subsided. Doom's mind now quiet as he realized what happened. You son of a bitch. The Doomslayer yelled, his body trembling in anger. What did you do to him? Nothing. I merely removed a problem from the equation. Tsench glowered with menace as he pointed his mutating finger. Now to solve it. Doom paused, feeling an uncontrolled rage begin to rise within him as his mind filled with violence. Visions of constant demon slaughter filling his mind as the red flowed. And so, hatred took the wheel. Red! Doom yelled, red light streaming from his armor as hellish pentagrams began to appear. Tsench and Ozek's eyes widened. He's invoking his true power. Help me contain him, pawn. Ozek paused before hesitatingly nodding. The containment of the Doomslayer was beneficial to both parties as the sorcerer reaching for his staff, only for something to impact his chest, shredding the pauldron and making the psyker stumble. That would have surely killed him were it not for the second layer of psychic protection. He turned his helmet to the end of the hallway as he spotted the culprit, a sister of battle alongside a Tau drone. Come and face your judgment, heretic. Ozek merely growled. I would normally find your attempt of hurting me entertaining, but I have no time for games. The sorcerer raised his staff before casting the incendiary of Tsench, blue-white fire racing from his palms as Joan's eyes widened. She jumped to the side, the fireball melting the metal like glass as she felt her soul sear. She clutched her chest, yelling out in pain from the psychic attack. He was about to cast an infernal gaze to finish her off before he heard something shatter. Doom had broken free, smashing away the constricting fabrics of reality like paper. Everybody could then feel it, an unspeakable hatred radiating from the man, a hatred that was beyond ancient. And that hatred was heading straight for Tsench, metal bending and breaking beneath the Doomslayer's leggings as he raised his fist, red runes of power developing around the gauntlet. However, despite the demon-ending threat, the god did not move or fight back, instead only raising his hand. It almost looked as if Ozek then realized what the god intended. It was a lure, a trap this whole time. A vortex began to form at Tsench's palm, the twisting nether peeling metal with ease from the floor and walls of the ship. Vega attempted to backpedal using the drone's thrusters. However, it was no use as the AI was sucked in first. Joan attempted to grab onto her cover, yet her mortal grip could only hold for so long. The sister of battle, gritting her teeth as she held onto her bolter, rushed in by the winds of the warp. As for the Doomslayer, the Marine seemingly paused as he was slowly sucked in, unable to hold his ground. So his crazed mind tried the next best thing. Letting out an inhuman roar, Doom jumped in the air, propelled forward by the rushing current of warp as his fist rapidly approached Tsench's face. However, just before he was able to hit his mark, the Doomslayer lost his momentum as the lower half of his body got sucked in, the raging current of the warp bashing against his armor as he fell through. It was a good try, but ultimately Usul dashed. A fist shot out of the other side of the vortex, breaking through the unstable current before striking Tsench right in the face as the Lord of Change spat out a wad of luminescent blood, the liquid spreading across the walls of the ship. The fist then disappeared, brushed away by the warp. There was a long pause, Tsench raising a hand to wipe the blood off his gray cheek before laughing, turning his body to Ozek. Now, leave this place, my champion. There is much work to be done. Ozek paused, not liking the fact that Tsench, the one who had damned his legion, considered him his champion. Regardless, he's slowly raising his staff in preparation, ready to traverse away within the warp and leave the warband to die. However, not before noticing the wound that had been inflicted on the god. Despite Tsench's ever-changing flesh, the bruise marks seemed to stay the same, droplets of dark blood dripping off the god's face. And for the first time, two questions graced the sorcerer's mind. Who was this Doomslayer? And why did Daemonkind fear him? Looking at Tsench's wound, he believed he had gotten an answer for the former. He would need to return to Sorciarius, the Crystal Labyrinth. Doom fell for what felt like hours before he face planted against the ground, a sizable crack forming as he lifted himself slowly, groaning out. He really let himself go there. The Slayer lifted himself from the ground before looking up at the sky, noticing the chaotic light of the warp streaming overhead. It appeared that he was back in the realm of chaos, but where? He was unsure, but in his rage-fueled state, he had seen Joan and Vega plummet into the vortex alongside him. He needed to find them, and fast. "Joan!" Doom called out, his voice booming. Yet despite the loud yells, he was only met with echoes of his own voice. He turned his helmet to the sides, seeing his distorted reflection upon the walls of the labyrinth as a myriad of different paths could be seen. "Okay, gotta find Joan and Vega, and then get the fuck out of here," Doom said before running forward, randomly choosing a path. He sprinted for a little bit before realizing he was back at where he started. "Oh, for fuck's sake." Doom swore as he crossed his arms. "Is this a puzzle? Because I hate puzzles." "Doom Slayer." A voice spoke. Doom froze, turning his head to the side. One of the mirrors slowly cleared, revealing a harlequin with an ever-shifting mask, promising both mirth and death. It was the laughing god himself. "Segarak," Doom said before going up to the mirror. "What the hell are you doing here? Is it not obvious?" The Eldar god chuckled. "I'm here to help you, of course." "Great. What do I do here?" Segarak looked to the side. "It is simple. Do not play the game. The crystal labyrinth only serves to befuddle the mind. You will only progress nowhere." Doom paused. "Cut it with the Buddhist bullshit. Joan and Vega are probably in trouble, and you want me to sit here with a thumb up my ass." "I did not say that." Segarak mused. "I shall be guiding you, after all. Step into the mirror and follow me." The Marine looked left and right before placing his leg forward. Noticing the leggings slipping into the glass like liquid, he then took another step before sinking into the warped fragment. He had made it through, looking around and noticing a tiny difference in a maze. Segarak was true to his word, the Eldar god casually strolling. "Come along now. We must find your mortal friend and that robot." "Hold on a second, Dash." Doom caught up. "What about Kane?" "Kine?" Segarak asked. He was merely fragmented within the warp. He should reform in the near future again. If you worry for him, then it is misplaced. Doom nodded. "Oh, that's a relief." He then turned his head, and another thing. "Yes, Dash." Segarak was immediately sucker-punched, the god holding his mask in pain as Doom held an angry look behind his helmet. The Eldar recovered, looking back up. "I suppose you were angry that I lied to you." "Yeah, no shit," Doom said as the two continued walking. "What the fuck was that different reality bullshit that you spouted when we met?" The laughing god sighed. "I lied to you because it was the best possible outcome. Telling you the truth outright would have been too much. So instead, I made you believe that this was a different reality rather than the grim future of, well, everything." Segarak then straightened himself. "Regardless, there is no use crying over spilt souls. Your friend should be up ahead here." Doom nodded before spotting something. A broken Tau drone. He jogged forward, coming up next to the drone, kneeling down as he sifted through the scrapped red metal. To his relief, Vega's hard drive was still intact as Doom took it, but the drone was completely totaled. He would have to find somewhere else to plug the AI in. "Doom Slayer." Doom turned his head to Segarak, who was pointing at something. The Marine's eyes widened. Joan was lying on the ground, squirming and murmuring something behind her helmet. "Joan!" Doom yelled before running up to her, placing a hand on her pauldron as he removed her sabbat pattern. Beads of sweat could be seen on her forehead as her eyelids were shut tight. He lifted his head, turning it to Segarak as the Eldar god inspected the problem. "What the fuck's wrong with her?" Segarak paused. "It's the warp. Her soul was already weakened by the psychic attacks beforehand. Now it's slowly consuming her, bit by bit." The god crossed his arms, "But I'm surprised that she has lasted this long. Most mortals would just outright die upon entering the warp." Doom looked up. "Thanks for that useless shit. Now how do I actually help her?" The Eldar god paused and thought. "You can't, and neither can I. My control of the warp is limited outside of the webway. But I may know someone who might be able to assist." Segarak turned around. "I'll be back in a moment's notice." He disappeared within the mirrors, a few seconds passing as Doom waited. It was after a minute or so that the god appeared, this time another figure with him, sporting a familiar gray power armor with flowing purity seals. And make no mistake, Xeno, if this is a trick, then Dash. Doom immediately recognized the voice. "Kaldor Drago." "Cal!" Doom yelled. The Grey Knight turned his head before immediately kneeling in front of the Green Marine. "Doom Slayer, it is an honor." Kaldor then turned his head to Segarak. "And it appears you spoke the truth, Eldar." Segarak seemed to roll his eyes. "You honor me, Mon K." Doom gritted his teeth. "Can you both stop jerking each other off and fix Joan?" Kaldor nodded, walking up next to the sister as he placed a gauntlet on her forehead. There was a pause before Kaldor stood up. "It is just as I feared, Doomslayer. Her soul is beginning to taint. One of the many demons that reside in the warp is attempting to take control of her body." "Great," Doom asked. "I punch demons, not exorcise them." The Grey Knight seemed to pause in thought. "I may have an idea." Kaldor brandished his weapon, By cutting her with the Titan's word, I can drive out some of the taint, but ultimately, it will have to rely on her own strength. Doom paused as he looked at Segarak, the Eldar slowly nodding. He then looked back down at Joan, noticing her teeth beginning to chatter as she murmured something. He knew the answer. Do it. Kaldor nodded before bringing his blade to bear, grabbing hold of her wrist. He then gently ran the plasma blade across, cutting a gash on her skin as it cauterized. Immediately, the Sister of Battle seemed to spasm, yelling out in pain, her eyes shut. It carried on for a few seconds before it began to die down. Kaldor's eyes widened. She is losing. Doom looked down at her, narrowing his eyes as he took off his helmet. Come on, is that really the way you want to go, you fucking weakling? Just like your sisters. He stooped forward, whispering next to her ear so Kaldor couldn't hear. The Emperor is also a pussy, and so are you if you don't beat this. That seemed to have an effect, her sleeping form pausing before convulsing, now fiercely against the warp. The Doomslayer smiled. Get ready. Kaldor tilted his head as Segarak watched from the sidelines. Immediately Joan awoke before balling a fist, attempting to punch the Doomslayer. The Marine laughed as he caught her fist. Good to have you, Dash. And then she followed up with her second, striking him in the face. Ow. Yeah, okay. I deserve that one. Joan nodded before looking at the cut on her wrist, turning her head on the floor before her eyes widened. Kaldor dragged Dash. Hush, child. Save your strength. She seemed to nod in disbelief before sighing, looking up at the ever-changing sky of the warp. Are we dead? Segarak shook his head. No, Mon K. You, me, Kaldor, and the Doomslayer are all very much alive within the warp. Joan looked at him with a cautious gaze. An Eldar. She then turned her head. Why is it always Eldar? Doom chuckled. You know, if it weren't for Segarak getting Cal over here, you'd be a playground for demons. Doom then put a hand beneath his chin, and then I probably would have had to kill you. She grunted before rising up, Doom helping her to her feet as she put on her helmet. Turning to Kaldor Drago himself as she knelt. It is an honor to be graced by your presence, Supreme Grandmaster. Kaldor smirked. It is not me who you should be kneeling to, but the killer of Slainish who stands next to you. Her face froze. Are you telling me that, Dash? Doom smiled behind his helmet. Now you believe me? She stared at him with shock, a realization dawning on her. So that means, be back in the Eldar ship, Dash. Yes, that was the head of She Who Thirsts. Segarak confirmed. Joan put a hand on her head. This is Dash. She then looked at the Doomslayer. Who are you? And why do you fight for us? Doom laughed. 'Cause I'm a Doomslayer. And then the walls of the labyrinth began to shudder, breaking apart like glass as the group turned. Oh great. Now what? Doom asked, taking out his double-barreled shotgun as Joan picked up her bolter. Kaldor and Segarak took out their respective weapons, with the Grey Knight readying his shield and sword. Segarak, on the other hand, took out a strange-looking whip in his right as his left gauntlet held what appeared to be a marionette controller. Isensa Downs. Kaldor warned. The labyrinth then disappeared, followed by the appearance of pink-fleshed and multiple-limbed creatures as a fortress of ever-shifting stone appeared. The horrors poured out as the sky filled with manta-ray-looking creatures called Screamers. Flamers followed by the flanks of this mutated army as they jeered and hissed at the group. A bird-looking demon led them, its wings spread as it held a staff that promised corruption. It pointed at Kaldor, hatred in its beady eyes. It is you, Kaldor Drago. Must you always interfere with my master's plans? Doom turned his head. Friend of yours? Kaldor narrowed his eyes. Yes. Kachin, the demon who casted me into the cursed warp. Great. Doom cracked his knuckles. The Marine then pressed on his helmet, BFG division beginning to play as he smiled. Let's kick his ass. And then the four of them braced themselves for the oncoming onslaught.